Hey people, Shinobi no Kami here. In this fanfic after the Kyuubi attack, Naruto was adopted by Kakashi Hitaki, an ex-Anbu captain and a student of Naruto's father Minato. How will this change the little Naruto's life? Will he be spared from the villagers' hatred or will things be the same as in the original timeline? Watch to know. Before we begin, please use the like button and share the video if you enjoyed it. Leave your thoughts in the comments section. Now, let's roll the intro. Chapter 51, Eliminations. Everyone was thankful for the rest they got. Although they soon had to go into the main chamber, there was a huge statue with what looked like an area. Above there were observation areas. It was pretty dark tone to the place as well. Naruto could see the other teams that had made it. The sand, sound and mist teams were here alone with several other teams from his village. Naruto-kun, Hinata said, going over to him with a hug. She had been worried when she had left him in the woods, but seeing him here put her at ease. He gently hugged her back. Hey there princess, by the way, thanks for the scroll. I promise to pay you back. Well, there is something, I'll tell you later, okay? She asked him, knowing that she had to bring him over to her father soon. He made it clear that the first break they had, she was to bring him home for a dinner so he could talk to him. Hey Naruto, looks like you lost the bet, Kiba grinned as he walked over to him. We've been here for about 3 hours now. Crap, Naruto muttered. Okay, first chance I get, I'll get you one. No hurry, but looks like we got to line up. The other boy said as everyone was gathering. So they all got into their teams and lined up. There were many other ninja from the village here, but in front of it all was the Hokage in his official white robes of office and hat. I'm glad to see you all here, the Hokage said to everyone. Although you should all congratulate each other on your success, it would seem that too many of you passed this test this year. Huh, what the hell does that mean? Someone asked. For the final round there are only a certain number of spots. The Hokage went on to explain that they would even held the exams. How the true meaning were showing the skills of each nation without actually fighting wars. A new ninja, a sickly looking one that seemed to cough a lot, showed up. He introduced himself as Hayate, explained things further. He was the proctor for the third exam, but it would seem that too many had made it through. Since so many important people were coming, they needed to show only the best. Meaning that, they had to weed them out even further. So they would hold elimination rounds. 2 people would be randomly picked and then they would fight. The winners would move on to the third and final stage. That didn't go over very well for most of them, but it wasn't like they had a choice. So they had to just deal with it, it would seem. Everyone took their places up in the stands, usually against the railings there, as they waited for the names to show up on the screen by the statue. Everyone was anticipating their challengers, although Team 7 knew they would have the hardest time. Sasuke wasn't sure what that mark would do, it was already hindering him. Naruto still felt really off thanks to that thing on his stomach, and Sakura, she still felt the aches and pains from that fight with the sound team. I wish Dad was here for this, Naruto said out loud with a sigh. He really wanted to have his dad here to see him, to make him proud. Well then just look behind you, a familiar voice said. Naruto and everyone else turned around surprised. Dad, I thought you would still be in the hospital. Naruto asked, seeing his father. Although Kakashi was on crutches and looked tired, he didn't seem to be in any pain. Enko was also standing next to him. Her arm was still in a sling, but otherwise she looked fine as well. Oh, don't worry, me and Enko were cleared, right? Kakashi said to her. Of course, she said, giving a huge smile. Konoha Hospital. Nurse Mai was just one of the regular medical staff. She was making her usual rounds at the hospital. She was checking on one of the new patients that had been brought in at this time. Mai knocked on the door to announce herself. Mr. Hitaki, are you awake? She asked. She didn't hear a sound, so she assumed her patient was sleeping. She opened the door to the plain hospital room. He was the only one in a bed at this point. The covers were pulled up leaving only his silver hair poking out. She looked at the clipboard to see what his status was. Chakra exhaustion, that can be very dangerous, she said to herself, and she went over to him. Mr. Hitaki, it's time for your medication. She shook him but he didn't move. Mr. Hitaki, are you okay? She pulled the covers back and screamed. There was a life-size looking scarecrow with a crude drawing on the face of it. She took a moment before, this time, screaming in rage as she threw the clipboard. I hate ninja patients, she yelled out. They always had a nasty way of leaving the hospital before they were medically cleared. If people thought doctors were the worst patients, then they never met a ninja. They always thought they were so tough and could take anything. To make matters worse, this was the third one this month that had escaped. What's going on? Another nurse asked as she ran into the room. She saw the scarecrow inside. Not another one, we just lost the female that was brought in with him as well. Why did they keep doing this? Mai asked. The other nurse just sighed and shrugged, I have no idea. God, I hate the paperwork for this. Forest of Death Tower. Well, I'm glad you're both here then, Naruto said, but then he looked serious. Hey Dad, can I talk to you about something? Kakashi noticed the serious look and nodded. He wasn't sure what was up, but he limped off to the side as Naruto went over to him. The other two members on the team were wondering what was going on, especially Sakura. She noticed that Naruto pointed to his stomach and she guessed it was due to whatever had been bothering him. He then looked around and turned his back to everyone when Kakashi said something. He pulled up his shirt and Kakashi took a look. Then he pulled it down and they exchanged a few more words. Even if she knew how to read lips, she couldn't tell what they were saying with the masks on. She sighed. This was just one more question that had started to show up with her teammate. So what do you think, Dad? Naruto asked him in a hushed tone. Kakashi thought about it. He knew seals but he wasn't a seal master. At the moment I can't do anything, but I do know of someone in the village that can help you out. Really? Well, that's great. I just hope I can pass this part with this stupid thing screwing with me. Hey look, they're showing the first match. Ino said loudly enough for everyone to turn to look. Hinata Hyuga versus Neji Hyuga. Everyone looked at the cousins as the two of them shared a look. Both didn't look like they wanted to fight the other, but they had no choice in this. Both silently went down to the arena, both looking like they wished they had a different opponent. Both were standing across from each other and only waited until the proctor told them to start. Hinata was nervous about this. She knew the kind of skills that Neji had, plus she didn't want to fight him. He was family and the closet things she thought of as a brother to this world. Go for it, Hinata-chan, I know you can do it. Naruto shouted out and she felt the warmth of his voice flow into her. She felt more confident as she took her fighting stance, as did Neji. With the proctor declaring the start, she moved in first. She struck out with her fists, her eyes activated. She would have to end this quick and fast if she wanted to beat him. If this dragged out, she would lose. Neji activated his own eyes as he was surprised to be put on the defensive. Normally that was Hinata that went into the defensive. He had to admit she had more fire in her now, and he had a feeling why that was. He laughed on the inside. Naruto always did bring out things in Hinata that no one else could. He had to keep his guard up, and when he saw an opening he threw an attack to her arm. She backed away feeling the pain of the hit but quickly got back into her fighting stance. Neji felt a pang of regret. True, he had spared with her many times, but in this the winner would be the only one to continue on. Both of them would want to go on and give their fathers something to be proud of. For a branch member to go to the finals on his first try would be something his father could be proud of. But he also knew that Hinata had it tougher. Being from the main branch meant she was under a lot more pressure to perform. He could always take this tests again. It's not like someone expected him to win. The truth was that she might want this more than he did. Hinata continued to fight, but it wasn't an easy battle. Then she finally saw an opening. Neji always kept up one of the strongest defenses she had seen. To see an opening like she was now was nearly unheard of. She struck out, hitting him in the ribs, and he backed off. She blinked. That shouldn't have happened. She was waiting for a counter-attack, but he didn't. It was then that she knew what was going on. He was going easy on her. She decided she couldn't play it that way, so the next time he struck out, she lowered her defenses and took a hit to her face. Hinata. Neji froze when he hit his cousin. He hadn't meant to hit her that hard like that. Why did you do that? I won't win like that, Hinata said as she got up. Please, don't go easy on me. Neji looked a little guilty at her as she had caught what he was doing. He saw the look in her eyes and knew that she wouldn't let him win like this. He mentally sighed as she got back into his stance and waited for her to do the same. This time either one held back as they fought. Up in the stands Naruto watched H's girlfriend fight. He had no idea that she was so limber. Bending backwards to dodge Neji's fist was very impressive. And a little hot, although a bit too young for it to be used, he did file that away for future use. The fight continued but it was soon apparent that Hinata was outclassed. Neji always trained his hardest to push himself to the limits and then go beyond. It was one of the few reasons that he was glad that Guy was picked to be his sensei. Sure, he was strange and the training could be insane but it helped him out. Although Hinata did train hard, she had to split her time between her duties as a main house member. Hinata was breathing hard as she tried to get up from another hit. Neji was getting more and more hits through her defenses. She was slowing down and was getting tired. Neji saw her struggling to get up. Although she knew she couldn't win, she was still pushing herself, refusing to get up. Please just stay down, Neji told her. If this goes on then I could end up hurting you very badly. I won't give up. She stood up on unsteady legs. Neji knew that if this continued on he would do serious harm. The gentle fist style took time but it was designed to break a person apart. Now all her injuries were starting to add up and he couldn't continue. He wanted so much to make his father proud, but he could never look the man in the eyes again if he put Hinata into the hospital. The role of the Branch family was to protect the main house. He let his guard down as he started to raise his arm. Proctor. Hinata's eyes widened as she saw what he was doing. He was going to give up. Neji-san, what are you doing? I won't allow myself to harm you anymore. I'm supposed to protect you, not hurt you. I'm sorry but I can't let you continue on like this, even if it means giving up on my goal. Hinata didn't want to disappoint her father or Naruto watching, but Neji was going to remove himself. She didn't want to win like this. She couldn't claim a victory by this. Only that she didn't lose, but still it seemed like a cheap way to go on. She wanted to get into the finals on her own merits and her own strength. If she couldn't do that, did that mean that she deserved to go on? Neji turned to the proctor who was waiting for him. Proctor, I give up. Everyone turned to see Hinata with her arm raised. Proctor, I forfeit. Hinata-sama, why? Neji asked her. She gave him a sad smile. Because you deserve it more than me. I'm not ready, I know that now. I want to go on with my own strength and now, you're stronger than I am. Neji looked at her in shock but quickly got a small smile on his face as he shook his head. He loved his cousin but her big heart might get her into trouble one day. He went over and put out his hand. She smiled as she shook it. I look forward to when you are stronger then. Hinata smiled up at him and nodded. Naruto sighed. Although he was proud that she stuck by her morals and her pride, he had been looking forward to seeing her in the finals. Well, he would just congratulate her anyway on how well she fought. Kintsuchi vs Shikamaru Nara. Hey Shikamaru, Sakura said to him as he passed her by, watch out for her bells. They make this genjutsu that messes with your balance. Also her knee and wrist should still be weak. Alright, thanks. He nodded as he lazily made his way to the ground floor. He studied the girl and she did seem to favor one side. Although he hated fighting girls, well, he hated to fight period, but girls even more so. When the fight started she seemed to start with her bells and Sakura had been right about them. It wasn't easy to figure out a way around this but he did come up with a plan. This time her bells created clones of her, or at least the illusion of clones. There was one Senbon with a bell on it somewhere but he couldn't exactly go after it. She was throwing more of those damn needles and they really hurt going in. He kept her distracted with talking as he got his shadow jutsu to nab her. He made it look like it was the shadow of a thread and so she would then copy his movements exactly. He got her into the right position, with her being too close to the wall while he was in the middle of the arena. They both drew out a kunai each, both threw it and both dodged by bending backwards. Too bad for Kin, her head slammed into the solid wall with enough force to knock her out. It was a short match but that was all. Wow, he's a lot smarter than I thought, Sakura stated as she was next to Ino. When you can get him off his lazy ass he can actually come up with some neat stuff, Ino told her best friend. So, Who's next? Sasuke Uchiha vs Kabuto Yakushi. Sasuke, Kakashi said, getting his attention. Don't use the mark, you haven't had the time to fight it and I could seal it to help, but we didn't have the time for it. Listen to him, kid, Enko said in a serious manner. At this point it will control you if you do. Alright then, I guess it's the hard way, the boy said as he reached for his katana. He would have to use his sword and fighting skills as using chakra seemed to bring out the damn thing. Kabuto however had other worries. He was here to work for Lord Orochimaru, he had been his spy among the Leaf for years now, but this proved to be a problem. For years he had been downplaying his skills, but the Uchiha wasn't at his best. Things would get out of hand and either Sasuke might end up killing him, or he would have to show his true talents. Well, maybe there was another option, he didn't need to progress in this to serve his master after all. Maybe it would be for the best, he needed to help with the plan. Proctor, Kabuto said before moving. I don't have the chakra to fight, so I'll have to withdraw. You sure about that? Hayate asked, coughing a little. Kabuto nodded in replay and the proctor was forced to make Sasuke the winner. What the hell? Sasuke yelled out. He's giving up without a fight. Well, maybe this is for the best. Kakashi said, relieved. Sasuke however hated to w in like this. He felt embarrassed about this and scowled at the white-haired teen across the gap. Zaku Abumi vs Shino Aburame. This fight had been pretty one-sided, even though Zaku was injured he still tried to fight. The air cannons in his one working arm were nasty, but Shino was ready. He knew now the kind of attack this genin used, plus he relied on it too much. A ninja that relied too much on a single technique ran the trouble of it being your biggest weakness. Shino made sure the sound genin's attention was all on him, while he used his bugs to get into the pathway of the working arm. There was a tube in there and over the course of the battle more and more insects would build up until it was blocked. With it plugged, the next time the boy tried to use it, he had a backfire effect. With his arm practically destroyed, it was easy for Shino to finish the boy off. He covered him in bugs and drained just enough chakra to make sure he couldn't move. Naruto Hatake vs Yoroi Akato. Alright, here I go. Naruto yelled out as he jumped down to meet one of Kabuto's teammate. For some reason both him and the other guy wore these all-black clothing with dark glasses like Shino's, but with this strange mask. It was just a piece of cloth that covered the lower face, unlike his own mask. The proctor began the match and Naruto decided to try out his wind techniques. Wind blade, he yelled out after finishing his hand signs and with a flat hand made a slashing motion. Although this was something he had been working on, the effect was not what he wanted. Instead of a super dense thin line of razor air slicing at his opponent, all he got was a nice little breeze. Ah crap, Naruto muttered as his chakra was more messed up than he thought. Yoroi just laughed, what the hell was that supposed to be? Shut up, I'm having an off day, okay? Naruto said, annoyed as he tired his favorite jutsu. He managed to create a total of 5 clones. Alright guys, this time we got to get this right. You got it, one clone said as they all reached for the blade on their backs. They all drew the chakra blade that belonged to the White Fang himself. Since he couldn't trust his chakra at the moment, he was going to do it the hard way, but thankfully with his grandfather's sword and his clones it might make things more interesting. The clones came at his opponent as he was wondering what kind of ninja this other masked genin was. Yoroi turned out to be pretty quick on his feet as he managed to dodge Naruto's attacks. The other boy pulled out a kunai as he would use that to parry the blades coming at him. The boy turned out to be better than most as he slowly started to cut down Naruto's clones. Finally only the real one was left and now Naruto was attacking. Yoroi had a few close calls, even a small cut on his arm from when he had lost sight of one of the clones during the earlier attack. If the boy could make any more clones than that, he would have been in serious trouble. But now he had what he was waiting for. Naruto thrust with his blade and the other boy went to block. At least that's what it seemed. He parried the blade and moved in closer. He grabbed Naruto by the wrists and bent his arm back as he kept moving forward. He placed his weapon arm into Naruto's elbow, now Naruto's arm. Holding his sword was bent back and had the kunai of his opponent dangerously close to his face. The hold was in place but he was sure he could get out of it, he just wondered why the guy wanted to get so close. Yoroi grinned as he managed to get a hold of the genin. He would drain the boy of all his chakra. Already he could feel the power flowing into him, he grinned to himself. The boy was rich in chakra, more so than anyone he had ever drained before. What the hell are you doing? Naruto asked as he struggled to get out of the grapple hold. Taking your chakra for my own, he said to him. Naruto's eyes widened as he tried to struggle free, but not for the reasons that the other guy might be thinking. Yoroi chuckled as the boy tried to free himself, but it was no use. The flowing life energy was going into him. Then suddenly something happened, the power changed. Suddenly his body felt like it was on fire, like the chakra was trying to burn him from the inside out. He screamed in pain as he pushed the boy away from him. He was clawing at his own skin as the burning didn't stop. It's burning me. What is this power? What the hell are you? He yelled out at him. No human should have chakra like this. You're not human. You're a monster. He continued to scream and thrash until his body went limp. No one spoke as the proctor went to check on the boy. He was unconscious and he quickly called for medics to be brought in. They carried him off quickly, leaving Naruto to look around. He could see various looks around him, confusion being the most of it. Then he felt something else. He saw that Gaara was looking at him now. There was something in those dead eyes, like he was looking at interesting prey, or maybe recognition, maybe both. Mother wants his blood, Gaara said mostly to himself as his brother and sister gave him a look. They both knew what this would mean, that Gaara would want to kill that Naruto guy now. Hopefully they could make him wait until the finals. Up in the stands, Sakura knitted her brow together. There was something going on now. She looked around and saw everyone was just as confused. Actually, check that. Only the genins were confused, the adults didn't look as surprised. What the hell was that all about? Sasuke asked, seeing what she was seeing. I don't know, she said quietly back. Do you think they're keeping something from us? Sasuke wasn't sure, but he felt like there was something going on. There were too many mysteries going on about Naruto lately that he could ignore. They noticed that he was very quiet as he was making his way back up the stairs. He wasn't even looking at anyone. It was odd to see him like this. Hinata went over to him, but he didn't seem to respond. Something was really bothering him. Sakura could tell if not even Hinata could get through to him. Masumi Tsurugi versus Sakura Haruno. When Sakura saw her name, she knew that she couldn't think about the mysteries about Naruto anymore. She prepared herself as she went to face off with the teammate of the person that Naruto had just put into the hospital. Like Yoroi, he was dressed in the same outfit. I have no idea what your blonde friend did to my teammate, but you'll pay for it. The older genin told her. Sakura felt a little nervous as she took out her tonfas. She wasn't sure what this genin was capable of as she had never seen him before. She decided to wait and see what he would do first. The older boy came at her and she prepared herself. He took out kunai and went to attack her. She dodged and slammed her tonfa into the elbow joint to break it. But to her surprise, it didn't break. It actually gave, but there wasn't anything solid there. The momentary surprise gave him a chance to slam a fist into her stomach. She grunted as she took a step back and brought up her other weapon to defend against his blade. But then she felt another blow, which was confusing as she was out of his range. At least she had thought as much as she felt something grab around her ankle. She looked down and was surprised that one of his arms was wrapping itself around like a snake. She slammed her metal weapon onto the flesh, but it was like hitting rubber. That won't work on me, little girl, Masumi said as he pulled and she was taken off her feet. She landed onto her back and then was taken into the air as he whipped her up like a chain. She was slammed back into the ground but kept the grip on her weapons. One of the things she had been trained to do was never let go of your weapons unless you wanted to. She felt the arm gone and quickly forced herself to roll and get some distance. She managed to get up only to see him smirking at her. My joints can be dislocated at will, plus my body then stretches out. You can hit my body, but you're only hitting soft flesh. The odds of you hitting any of my bones are very small. Sakura knew she was in trouble now. He had the range on her and she couldn't hurt him at this distance. Suddenly his arms shot out at her again and she was put on the defensive. That's how her fight went as she kept dodging his arms, trying to think of a way to attack. She tried shurikens but he only dodged them. But sooner or later she had to make a mistake, and while dodging one arm another managed to hit her in the kidneys. Staggered, she was easy prey as his arms wrapped around her entire body now. The arms started to crush her body. She grunted out in pain as she couldn't breathe at the moment. She knew that if she breathed out, she wouldn't be able to take in any more air, but her lungs were already starting to burn with the need for air from all the physical activity she had been doing. "Go ahead, kid, try and take a deep breath," he goaded her. "It will be over quickly, and if you don't, I'm pretty sure your ribs are about to break anyway, then I'll just crush your internal organs." Sakura hadn't thought that he was actually going to try and kill her, but this was the Chunin exams. Even if he was a leaf, it would seem that killing fellow ninja happened. She needed to think. She hadn't been in a position like this since that first real mission. The mission where she had killed a man. It was a painful memory, but she had grown a little harder to it. She needed to think. She couldn't die here. She wouldn't die here, she decided. She couldn't use her arms or legs, so what did that leave? There was one option. It wasn't glamorous, but it might be effective. She looked down and opened her mouth as she quickly bit into the flesh near her mouth. She bit down as hard as she could. She could taste blood in her mouth and it wasn't hers. He cried out in pain as his arms loosened up and she managed to slip out. "Well, that was effective," Anko smirked at her. "Girl knows how to fight dirty. I think I like her more now. Hopefully she can capitalize on it," Kakashi said as they watched on. Masumi was cradling his arms, seeing the blood flowing out of it. It wasn't too bad, but it still hurt. He couldn't believe the girl actually bit him. He stretched his arms out. This time he was going to crush her limbs and then wrap around her neck. He was going to finish her off quickly before. Now he was pissed. Sakura knew what to expect this time, but she also had been working on a plan. So far this guy only seemed to be able to extend his arms, so the rest of his body had to be solid. She only had one chance. She carefully watched how they moved as she looked for her opening. The world seemed to slow as her mind increased, and suddenly she saw it as clear as day. She jumped between the hands as she rolled forward. Letting her momentum carry her, she kicked off and managed to cover most of the distance. Sakura knew that he would bring his arms back. It was only a matter of time of who was quicker. Sakura saw the arms retracting, but she wasn't sure if she would make it. She only had one chance. She put all the power she could into her legs and jumped forward. She threw one of her tonfas at her opponent. He took a moment to dodge it, but that was what she wanted. He was now in her path and she thrust forward, hitting him in the solar plexus. There was no joint there, no way of him shifting or moving the parts of the body of his core. He groaned in pain as his arms went limp, and he staggered back. Sakura wasted no time. She couldn't let him recover. She twisted her tonfa around and with the short end, jabbed it straight into his jaw. A large piece of bone that she knew he couldn't protect like his arms. His head snapped back as he staggered a few more steps. She kicked him in the stomach, and as he bent forward she swung her weapon in an arc to catch him in the side of his skull. He fell to the ground with her panting as her adrenaline started to drop off. "Damn," Ino muttered to herself. She was glad that she wasn't fighting Sakura. Those weapons of hers may not look lethal, but they were nasty. Kakashi smiled as he could breathe more easily now. He looked to Guy and Asuma. "Looks like I won the bet. All my genins made it." "Maybe, but Ino and Choji still have to fight," Asuma said. "And Tenten and Lee as well. You may not be the only one with their full team going through," Guy said to his eternal rival. Anko smiled as Sakura made her way up to them. "Hey kid, that wasn't bad." "Thank you, Anko-sensei," Sakura said, feeling proud at how she had done. "Nice going, Sakura-chan," Naruto said, a bit more normal again. Although he seemed a little down about his match, but at least he seemed more like his normal self. Sasuke looked at her and gave her a rare smile with a nod. She blushed a bit. He was actually proud of what she had done. Her inner self was very happy about it, but she kept her emotions in check. She gave a small smile and a nod back to him as she took her place with her team. Chapter 52, The Final Eliminations. So far things were going well for the exams, thought the Hokage. He was happy to see that Kakashi's team had made it all the way through. It was a very rare thing to happen, but it went a long way to prove that he could deliver what he promised when the team was formed. Already he could see potential in them all. Although it was a bit sad that the last Uchiha couldn't fight, but from the reports he got, that might have been a hidden blessing. The thought of his old student still pained him deeply. He always wondered where he had gone wrong with the boy. What had caused him to change, or had it been gradual? Had he been blinded by his love for the boy that made him miss the signs? That was the sad thing, he had loved the boy almost like a son. Such a gifted and talented boy, he had so much promise and yet he became nothing short of a monster. The old man always wished he could undo his greatest failure. Orochimaru hadn't always been the man he was now. Looking at the youngsters here, he was wondering how many Orochimarus lay hidden under the masks of innocence. He was feeling his age now, he was old and tired but the village still needed him. He just wasn't sure just how much longer he could hold out. His spirit still held the will of fire, but his body was another story. Perhaps it was time to start thinking on retirement again. He was one of the oldest Kages in history, but times were changing. He could feel it in his bones and a new leader would be needed soon. The only problem was with who. The board came alive as the names randomly danced over the screen until it settled on 2 more names. Dosu Kinuta vs Choji Akamichi. Oh man, I got to fight the scary-looking mummy guy. Choji had remembered what he had seen before, how that guy had taken out Kabuto with 1 blow. Oh come on, you can do this, Ino told him. I bet Asuma-sensei will take us out to barbecue if we all pass, right? Asuma smiled and nodded his head. That's right, if you all pass then I'll take you all out, on me. He hoped they did win, or at least tie with Kakashi's team, then the pot would be split and he could afford it. Every Chunin exams, all the Leaf Ninja Jonins would put in for a pot. Everyone that had one winner got a smaller prize but no one had gotten a slam dunk before that is until Team 7. Just be careful of that thing on his arm, Shikamaru said to his best friend. I don't know what it is, but it looks important. Oh, okay then. Thanks, and you can bet that I'll bring home a win. Choji said with enthusiasm as he walked down to the arena. He could already taste the juicy meat, man he couldn't wait to eat. Soon he came face to face with his opponent. Look fatty, if you want to die that bad then by all means give me your best shot. Dosu said to him chuckling. What did you just call me? Choji yelled out enraged. I'm not fat, I'm husky, expansion jutsu. His whole body just expanded like a balloon, then he pulled his arms and legs into his body like a turtle as blue chakra was seen for a moment. Then his head went in and he became a giant ball. Dosu was taken by surprise as he never heard of something like this before. He quickly threw himself to the left as the other boy came at him like some kind of giant boulder. The boy was spinning himself, making himself move with a decent amount of speed. Dosu noticed that although he was large, he was only fast in going one direction. When the big boy turned he had to turn in a wide arc and he doubted the boy could adjust his aim on the fly. He dodged again to check and it was working out. He was able to dodge but the other boy couldn't turn quick enough to capitalize. Now he just needed a way to make the boy stop for just a moment, he couldn't hit him while he was spinning that fast. He remembered what happened to Kin and decided to use the wall to his advantage. He maneuvered himself to the wall and waited. The boy was coming at him just like he knew he would and at the last moment he jumped out of the way. Choji slammed into the wall making himself stuck, now Dosu had a chance. Although he couldn't use his sound wave with his head covered, sound could travel in other ways. He slammed his gauntlet into the body's body and activated it. The sounds moved through the body, they traveled through it until it reached the inner ears. At that point it was all over as Choji lost his concentration and turned back to normal and fell the ground unable to stand. Aw man, I was sure he was going to win, Ino whined, what the hell happened? Choji's body acted like a conduit for the sound, Shikamaru told her. The sound traveled inside of him instead of outside. Oh man, I was looking forward to getting treated too. Ino sighed. Well, I hope he's okay at least. Yeah, he should be fine if just really dizzy. He told her. Kiba Inuzuka vs Gendo Kage. Kiba looked at his opponent, he didn't know what to expect from the foreigner, although his ice blue eyes were hard and cold as his face. The boy looked very controlled and it was hard to tell what kind of ninja he was. Well, he wasn't going to wait around, he charged forward but the other boy just stood his ground. As soon as he lashed out, at the last moment the boy moved. It was quick and fast, he first dodged his blow then took his wrist and gave a punch to his armpit. The pain Kiba felt was intense, but the boy didn't stop, he kicked him hard in the ribs making the Leaf Ninja fly back. If this is the best you can do, you will die this day. Gendo said coldly to him. Kiba held his arm from the pain, the nerves under the armpit were very sensitive and apparently the Mist Ninja was good as hand-to-hand combat. Well, it looks like he would have to pull out all the stops, he placed his hands into a seal for a special one that only his clan use. Ninja art of beast mimicry. All Four's jutsu. Kiba thought to himself as the chakra in his body started to make the changes. This was something that his clan used, it was a secret how it was done, but what it did was make the user more canine. Giving them enhanced senses but also enhanced speed, strength and reflexes. His canine teeth expanded as his fingernails turned more into claws, he leapt at the other boy ready to slash with his claws. Gendo was hard-pressed to dodge this time as the claws managed to just cut through his clothing but only just that. Gendo took a step back as he studied his opponent, the boy was too sure of himself and charged right in. Kiba did just that, charging in wildly but Gendo was ready for that kind of speed and adjusted accordingly. He jumped back and reached behind the small of his back with his left hand, he pulled out a knife he kept for in close combat where his sword was too large. He dropped down as he gave a cut to Kiba's arm, then revered the blade and swept back with it cutting Kiba's coat as he missed the ribs. Kiba hadn't expected the mist ninja to be this tough. Well, he would have to deal with not just him, he was saving his dog just in case, and it would look like it was time to call him out. Akamaru, I think it's time boy. He dug into his pocket as he pulled out one of the special bills used for the dogs. His small dog jumped up to eat it, his fur became brown as he got more wild looking. This was a battle pill used to make their dogs even more powerful in battle. Kiba crouched down as his dog landed on his back. There was a puff of smoke and suddenly there were two Kibas there in the arena. Gendo didn't look impressed. 2 or 1, it's still the same to me. Oh yeah, well, try this one, fang over fang. Kiba shouted out as both of them jumped out at him and turned into twisting whirlwinds of destruction. Gendo quickly overcame his surprise and dodged, but he was hit slightly on the shoulder. His uniform was ripped and also he felt his skin was torn slightly as well. He didn't get much of a breather as they came around for another go. He pulled his sword to parry one of them, but the other slashed him in the back. He was kept on the defensive, he was only just barely to keep from being torn apart even more. Gendo pulled a smoke bomb to hide himself, but the smoke may had blinded most ninja, but for an Inuzuka they had other ways to see. You think this will stop us? We can still smell you. Kiba grinned as they fought on. Who said that was the reason I wanted to hide from your sight? Came Gendo's voice. The only problem was that Kiba heard it behind him but he could smell him from ahead. Then a sharp pain bit into his skin as he cried out. He heard Akamaru cry out as well, but more cuts came into Kiba's body. When the smoke cleared, both Kiba and Akamaru were laying on the ground wounded from several cuts. There were also several versions of Gendo there as well. What the hell? Kiba asked weakly. Kai, Gendo said as the others dissolved into water. He had used water clones while under the cover of the smoke and attacked from different angles. Kiba lay there feeling the pain of the sword slash, it hurt like hell. He had never been wounded before and he could smell his own blood. He coughed as he looked up to the ceiling trying to move but it hurt too much. Gendo walked over to him, dragging the sword on the ground, the scrapping sound was like a death toll in Kiba's ears. He looked up to see the other boy with a cold grin on his face. Time to end this mutt, Gendo said as he raised his sword to finish him off. Kiba could only stare in horror as this boy was going to kill him. Kiba-kun. Hinata yelled out as she covered her mouth in horror. Kurenai-sensei. Proctor. Kurenai yelled out, as the boy's sensei, I forfeit for him, stop the match. Kurenai didn't want to have the boy die there in the ring and didn't want to take the chance that the proctor could wait too long to stop it. These exams were deadly at times and the mist ninja was out for blood. Alright, this match is over then, the proctor said. Gendo looked sourly at them, what are you talking about? The boy still lives, so this fight goes on until one of us dies. That is how we do things in my village, the strong survive and the weak die, that is the way of the world. We only came here for one reason. He eyed Team 7 who were watching him. To show how a real mist ninja does things. His sword started to come down but to everyone's shock, Kiba's body faded away. The young mist ninja was taken aback by it but soon found a kunai to his throat. He looked to see that Kurenai was behind him, giving him a hard look that said he would have to get past her to finish Kiba off. The mist genin knew that he was no match for a jonin, and that the boy was most likely hidden behind some kind of genjutsu. He put away his blade as he glared back at her, coddling your students will only get them killed when you are not there. It is better he dies now so that a stronger one can replace him. We do things differently here, she told him. Obviously, the boy said in disdain of her actions and left to join his teammates. Kurenai got rid of the genjutsu as the medics came running to see to the boy. Kurenai was worried. The wound was nasty, although thankfully it looked like Kiba would pull through, although it would take time for that wound to heal, and would be his first scar from battle as well. She looked to see the worried looks of her team and of the others who were friends with the boy and his dog. She would have to let them know he would be okay, although the boy's comment on coddling rang through her head. Was she too easy on her students? She didn't think so. Then again, the Mist were more extreme in their practices and training. Perhaps she should review a bit of their training. If they ever came up against someone like that again and she wasn't around, the thought wasn't a pleasant one. Tenten versus Temari. Tenten grinned as it was her turn up. She couldn't wait for her chance. She got the ring eagerly as she waited for the other girl to show up. She was at least a year older and seemed to have some kind of weapon behind her. That was good. She loved fighting other people who used weapons. Neji was starting to worry. Since the start of this match, Tenten had not been doing too well. It was just bad luck that she got the worst possible opponent for this match. He hadn't known that Temari was a wind user. Tenten was trying everything, but she couldn't get close to the Suna girl. That fan was keeping Tenten at a distance. Plus the strong winds were blowing all her weapons away. He watched as Tenten was forced to use the one technique that was her best one. He watched as Tenten pulled out 2 scrolls. They looked like any normal kinds, but Neji knew just which ones those were. This was Tenten's own technique, the Twin Rising Dragon. Tenten smiled, thinking she could still pull out a win as the 2 scrolls rose up into the air, making a double helix. They stayed up in the air almost as if hanging on strings. Tenten jumped up as she put chakra into her legs and reached the top. The scrolls were filled with seals that held many weapons she had sealed into them. One by one different weapons would be released, and faster than a normal human, Tenten threw out weapon after weapon. Unfortunately, Temari wasn't impressed. She easily blew the weapons and Tenten away with one giant blast from the fan, and all the weapons were blown away. Tenten fell as she lost her concentration and she slammed onto Temari's fan right onto her back. Tenten cried out as she went limp and Neji froze in horror. That kind of fall could cripple a person or kill them if her spine broke just right, plus that Suna girl did that on purpose. She smirked at her own superiority as she just cast Tenten aside. As soon as the proctor called the match, Neji raced to her side. He knelt down as he checked her out. His eyes could see fractures, but the spine was intact, thankfully. Tenten moaned in pain. Her body hurt and she felt numb in some areas. "Tenten, can you hear me?" Neji said gently to her. "Neji?" Tenten asked weakly. "Lay still, you took a bad hit," he said as he stopped her from moving. "I lost," Tenten said in a defeated tone. She let her team down. She let herself down. She had tried so very hard, but she had just been outclassed the entire match. It had been pathetic. What must Neji think of her now? She didn't want to open her eyes to see the look on his face. "I'm sorry." "Don't be," he said in a surprisingly gentle tone. "You should be proud. You fought without giving an inch. I'm proud of you." Tenten's eyes shot open as she looked up at him. She was surprised to see the look on his face and eyes. She could see that he wasn't disappointed in her. In fact, he looked worried for her and something else, something she couldn't understand, but it made her feel a bit warm inside for some reason. She felt him holding one of her hands and she blushed a bit. She knew that Neji rarely showed his emotions. After all, most Hyuga were like that. So for him to show such a simple gesture to her, spoke volumes. The medics came out yet again with a stretcher and gently placed her in it, being mindful of her neck and back. Neji felt Guy's presence behind him as he watched them load her onto it. It was just bad luck that she got that Temari girl for an opponent. Guy said to him and he nodded. "Give my apologies to Liwulyu sensei." Neji told him, not looking at the man. "I want to make sure she's well, so I will most likely miss his match." Guy smiled at the boy before him. "Now there is the true spirit of youth. Looking out for your comrade shows the fire burns bright in you, my young student. I'm proud to see it." Neji sighed as she shut his eyes. He just wished that Guy wouldn't make such a big deal of things. As he walked off silently to ensure that Tenten would be okay, he did cast a look and locked eyes with the Suna girl. He gave her a cold look. He made a vow that if he met her in the finals, and he would avenge Tenten's defeat by that girl's hands. Ino Yamanaka vs Amy. Ino wasn't sure what to expect when she got into the arena with the Mist Girl, but after seeing what the girl's teammate had done to Kiba, she wasn't taking any chances. So this is my opponent, some frail-looking girl playing ninja. Amy smirked at the shorter girl in front of her. What did you say? Ino yelled out. I'll have you know I come from a long line of ninja. Your ancestors must weep themselves to sleep every day then, Amy said in a deadpan expression. Ino had a facial tic at that point. There was no way she was going to let this dark-haired girl say things like that. Although she too was wearing bandages, hers looked strangely different to Ino. She couldn't place it, but whatever. She was sure it wouldn't be much. Fine then, here I come. Ino yelled out as she threw 2 kunai. Amy pulled out 2 and deflected them with 2 of her own. The 2 started with using taijutsu against each other. Ino was about average with it, but the other girl trained a lot harder than Ino did. Soon the blonde girl had to keep her distance from the other girl's attacks. Ino knew that she had no genjutsu, and her only ninjutsu besides the academy stuff was her family jutsus. If only she could use them, but there was a major problem with that. Ino had to get her to stand still, in order to use her mind jutsus. It was the main weakness in them, plus the other major one being that if she missed, her body would be defenseless. Given what that guy had tried to do with Kiba, she didn't feel like getting killed while knocked out. Amy, stop playing around. Gendo called out. I was just starting to have some fun too, Amy pouted a bit. She unwrapped the bandages on her arms and Ino was left wondering what was going on, that is until they shot out at her. Ino dodged them but felt a sharp pain on the side of her face. She reached up and felt blood as her eyes widened. My bandages are special, they have thin wires woven into them, turning them into both armor and weapons. Amy grinned as she pushed out her hands as many different strands fly out at Ino. Ino tried to dodge but there were just too many, and she didn't have enough speed to help herself out. Cut after cut was forming on her body, nothing fatal, but Ino had a feeling the other girl was enjoying it. Sakura's hands tightened on the rail watching the girl that was her best friend being cut to pieces. Ino was like the sister she never had, but to see her like this all bloody made her surprisingly angry. She wanted to jump down there and stop it, but it would disqualify Ino and possibly herself, but she was prepared to do it anyway and damn the consequences. Asuma won't let it go too far, Kakashi said, not even looking at her, almost as if he was reading her mind. We Jonin wouldn't let our students die unnecessarily. We put you all into harm's way to prepare you for your life as a ninja, but we are always try to ensure that it's not something you can't handle. Ino was starting to feel weak. She could feel the stinging cuts all over her body, and the warm fluid of her own blood. She couldn't last much longer at this rate, she was losing too much blood. I think it's time to finish this, I've had my fun. Amy smirked as her bandages shot out and managed to grab Ino's arms and legs. She cried out as the material started to cut into her arms. Well, that's it. Shikamaru sighed. She can't get out and she can't quit. That girl is going to cut her limbs off. He looked to their sensei and he sighed and nodded. I agree, Asuma said. He had hoped that Ino would have done better, but this mist girl was just too much for her. Proctor, as sensei for Ino, I call my right to forfeit in her place. Very well then, the proctor said. The winner of this match is Amy. You can let the girl go now before I kick you out. Amy sneered as she let the blonde girl fall to the ground. Asuma and Sakura were the first to run towards the girl. Sakura hadn't seen so much blood in a very long time. To make it worse, it was all Ino's. Will she make it? She asked the medics that ran out to her. She's lost a lot of blood, one of them said, putting in a blood pill into Ino's mouth. It would help restore her blood loss for a bit, but she would need transfusions. If we hurry, she shouldn't be too bad. Sakura sighed as she watched them cover Ino's wounds and wrap her up. Only to leave Ino's blood staining the floor. Sakura glared angrily at the mist girl as she just walked off like it was nothing. Gaara versus Akuma. The mist ninja stared at the younger boy, although for some reason he was getting an uneasy feeling about him. There was just something about the boy, the eyes were those of a killer that he was sure of. But his body language told him that he didn't care one way or another about this fight. He was a strange one, but he decided to test out this boy's abilities first. As soon as the match started, he threw out several kunai to see what the boy would do. He was surprised to see a wall of sand suddenly show up out of nowhere and stop them. The boy hadn't even moved a muscle. To have that kind of control over something without moving was already telling the mist ninja much. Well then, let's see if you can hit what you can't see. Akuma smirked as he started to make hand seals. As soon as he had finished, the arena floor was being covered in mist. Hey, I remember that. Naruto yelled out. Yes, it's a move that comes from the Mist Village after all, Kakashi said as he watched them. This should be interesting to see how this plays out. Akuma knew that the boy wouldn't be able to see him coming. He practiced being a silent killer and now he was putting it to use. He quickly and quietly ran up to the boy ready to strike, but still the sand was blocking him. Every blow he threw, somehow the other boy was able to get the sand back up. It didn't make sense. The Suna boy shouldn't have been able to see him. He was sure the other boy couldn't smell or hear him, so how did he do it? As the mist started to fade, Akuma looked hard at the other boy and then he noticed something. Looks like you'll be slowing down some, Akuma said, seeing his sand. Sand isn't a good thing to mix with the water that's in the air from my mist fog. So let's see what happens if we use a lot more water. Akuma went through the seals and called up a water dragon missile. The large dragon was formed out of the water that was still in the area. A true master of this could use the condensation in the air to form it, but there were still plenty of water molecules left over to use as well. The giant dragon shot out at Gaara as his sand went to protect him out of instinct. There, let's see you use your sand when it's nothing but mud. Akuma ran forward, not letting Gaara take a breather. Already he could see the sand had been turned into mud from the water it absorbed. Gaara had been taken by surprise. There was little water in the desert and the mud, although he could feel it, was heavy and sluggish. He couldn't move it fast enough to stop the boy from landing a punch at his face. The mist ninja didn't stop as he continued to pummel on Gaara. He kept trying to move the sand, but it was useless while wet. He called forth fresh sand from his gourd and went on the offensive against the mist ninja. So that's what's in there, then I guess I'll have to do better than that. He grinned at Gaara. He went into more hand seals. Water cannon jutsu. With that he opened his mouth as a stream of water shoot out at Gaara. When he was soaked, Akuma went in for the kill. He pulled out a kunai and with a slash went for Gaara's neck. There was silence for a moment as a line was shown on Gaara's neck but no blood. Everyone was confused as to how he wasn't bleeding. Then sand started to seep out of the wound as it closed up. The hell, you have sand inside your body or something? Akuma asked out loud. Hey, is that even possible? Naruto asked his father. Kakashi thought about it. Somehow I doubt it. Look at the skin where he was punched, there is no bruising yet. My best guess is that he's got another layer of sand that is covering his skin like a second line of defense. I have to admit this genin has one of the most impressive defenses I've even seen. So he's going to lose? Naruto asked. I'm not sure, it depends on if he can get on the offensive. Akuma was getting frustrated now. Just how much water did he have to dunk on this red-headed boy to get past that damn sand? Well, at any rate it didn't matter. If he had to drain his chakra and pour a lake onto him, he would do it. Meanwhile, Gaara had his own plan. Ever since the first time his sand was wet, he had been slowly leaking his sand under the arena. Sand could be made from a lot of things, including crushed rock. When he realized that his sand had a weakness to water, he came up with a plan. Slowly his sand had been crushing the rock under their feet to create a large amount of sand under them. He couldn't wait to see his enemy's blood. This one was proving more challenging than most, but he was still nothing to him. Asuma made it only a few steps back before the ground under him fell apart and sand came up from the ground to surround his body. Gaara grinned manically at the ninja as the sand stared to envelop him. You weren't too bad, mother now wants your blood. What the hell are you, some kind of bloodline freak like most of the ninja in this weak village? Akuma said as she struggled to get out. That kind of control over sand wasn't natural. He knew what the boy had done, but to take all those hits, fight and still do this was insane. No, I'm something worse, Gaara told him as he raised a hand. Sand coffin. The sand completely covered the mist ninja now. Gaara then closed his fist as he said, sand burial, and the sand contracted. The ninja was instantly crushed by the pressure of the sand. Blood stained it as more blood was literally squished out of the sand like toothpaste. The arena floor was covered in blood now. The sand receded and what was left of the ninja couldn't even be called a human corpse anymore. The sickening display made many uncomfortable. Only the hardened adult ninjas could really stand the sight. Although the two surviving mist ninja didn't look pleased as all, they looked at Gaara with naked hatred at the death of their teammate but didn't say or do anything. Gaara took his sand back into the gourd on his back as he calmly walked up the stairs with a bored look on his face. What the hell? Choji asked, feeling very sick. It was only luck he hadn't thrown up at what had happened. Hinata had passed out with Kurenai looking over her. The others were just as unnerved. Sasuke knew a strong opponent when he saw one, but he also noticed the Gaara and the mist ninja wouldn't hesitate to kill. He remembered his own first time killing. Had he really been like that? Looking back on the incident, he knew now why Kakashi had taken him aside for that talk. Looking at those three, he could see the kind of people you became when killing was nothing to you. Sakura was next to him, barely able to stand. Her legs felt weak, and watching the medics take away the remains wasn't pleasant. It was another cold reminder of the life she chose for herself, that one day she or someone she knew could end up just like that. Kankuro vs Rock Lee. Yes, finally. Lee shouted out with joy. All this time he had wanted to join in and fight, and finally he was getting his chance. I've been waiting so very long to show the world the burning flames of my youth. That's right, Lee, show them all the power of youth. Guy said to him. Guy-sensei. Lee. Guy-sensei. Lee. Hey, we doing this or not? Kankuro yelled out as he waited for the strange green glad boy to get down to the arena. Where all the ninja in his village freaks or something? At any rate, by the time the kid had reached the arena he was already getting bored. Lee was totally prepared for a fight. He got into his usual stance as he waited to begin. As soon as the match started he ran towards his opponent. He sent a flying kick to Kankuro's stomach, followed by a barrage of punches. A normal human would have been hurt by such blows, but something was wrong. The older Suna boy was still standing. Lee stood there unable to see how the boy had just shrugged off his attacks like they were nothing. Is that all you got? Man, you're weak. Kankuro laughed at him. I do not know how you were able to take those blows, but there is only one thing that I can do. I have to hit even harder and faster than before. Lee shouted out as he became even faster and the blows were shattering. In fact, they did shatter a part of Kankuro's face right off, leaving a brown wooden thing under it. Damn, didn't know you could hit that hard. Kankuro said as the object that was wrapped up on his back suddenly unwrapped itself. It was then that the real Kankuro came out, and the one that Lee had been fighting shed its disguise. Kankuro hadn't expected the boy to start damaging his puppet like that. If the fight continued as it did, then he would have lost, as his puppet couldn't use many of its special techniques while it was disguised. So it was time to take the fight to the next level, and he was just fine with that as he unleashed his favorite puppet to date. The puppet was called Karasu. It had 3 eyes, 4 arms with a tattered cloak. Kankuro with his hands sent his best puppet after Lee. He was surprised by the speed the other kid was moving at, but his puppet had surprises of its own. The arms suddenly shot out to try and trap Lee in their grasp, but he was very agile. He jumped into a handstand and pushed off, and as soon as he landed jumped again. Damn it, stand still. Kankuro was trying to keep up, but the green kid was fast. To hell with it then. Karasu's mouth opened up as black smoke came out at Lee. The smoke quickly covered the distance, but Lee didn't let it touch him. He did a powerful jump off the ground and actually sailed over the smoke. But Kankuro was prepared. He had Karasu's mouth open and deadly needles covered in toxins flew at Lee. Most of them missed, but Kankuro smiled as a few hit the boy in the leg warmers. Good, that should slow you down. Kankuro yelled out happily to see Lee finally come to a rest on top of the giant stone hands. But something was wrong, the boy wasn't going down at all. What the hell, you should have dropped by now. There is no way you can withstand the toxins I put onto those. Guy was proud of his student. He only had his taijutsu, but he used it to its fullest. Although he was confident that Lee wouldn't have to go all out, if he kept fighting like this he would be taken out of the competition. Perhaps it was time to show them the full power of Lee's youthful flames. Lee, I think it's time to take them off. Guy told him. Lee was surprised that his teacher would say that. But Guy-sensei, you told me to only to do that as a last resort. I know, but there are exceptions, and this is one of those times. So take them off and show the world the power of youth and hard work. Guy gave him the thumbs up. Lee smiled brightly at this. He could finally go all out. He pulled down the leg warmers, being mindful of taking off the needles. He took off the leg weights and he could already feel light as a feather now. Now Kankuro knew why the darts didn't affect him, they had hit those damn weights. Well, he was just going to have to make sure his aim was better next time. Man, I wonder how much he's put on since the last time we sparred. Naruto thought as Lee let them go. When they hit the floor, they hit the force of 2 small bombs, the entire place literally shook. What the hell? Naruto yelled out at the insane amount of weight that Lee was using. Kakashi sighed, now thanks to Guy he had a feeling that Naruto and Sasuke would want their weights increased until they could reach that level. He would have to thank Guy properly later for that. Lee suddenly disappeared in a green blur as he moved faster than most eyes would track. He was certainly faster than Kankuro could track. He tried the smoke again, but Lee just blew right through it like the wind. He gritted his teeth as he tried to track Lee's movements. He had his puppet send the arms everywhere he could and fire the toxin darts out of the mouth. He was hoping for a lucky shoot to at least slow the boy down. It didn't work. Lee suddenly appeared right in front of Kankuro and in a low stance. Kankuro knew this was the worst thing for a puppet user. The biggest weakness was that if an opponent could get past the puppet, then the user was totally defenseless. He tried to get away and get his puppet to attack Lee from behind, but it was too late. Lee gave a solid kick to Kankuro's chin, sending him flying up into the air. Lee jumped up and gave another kick to the small of the back, and somehow, he twisted in midair and slammed his leg into the boy's chest. Kankuro rocketed to the ground and slammed hard into the floor. Lee stood ready for more, but it looked like Kankuro wasn't going to get up anytime soon after that combo. The winner of the final round is Rock Lee. The proctor proclaimed. Finally, we can start into the third part of the exam. Chapter 53, Preparations. With the fights over, the winners were gathered up in front of the giant statue of the hands. The Hokage as well as the Jonins were all there as the final part was done. Everyone would be gotten a random number for the next round of fights. One by one the genins went up and took a green ball with a number on it. Once they called out their number, their name was written on a board that had been brought in. Once the names were placed, it was then that everyone could see their matches. First final matches would be Sakura vs Amy, Naruto vs Gendo, Lee vs Dosu, Sasuke vs Gaara, Neji vs Shino, and finally Temari vs Shikamaru. Neji didn't look too happy about that as he had wanted the Suna girl, but if he defeated Shino he could fight her if she won. Then again, the fact he was up against Shikamaru could easily mean that she would win. He had nothing against the boy, it was just that Shikamaru was the laziest and undisciplined genin he had ever seen. The girl was obviously the total opposite, so the odds were in favor of him meeting up with her. The Mist Ninja didn't look even fazed by the death of their comrade. They did give cold looks to Gaara, who just ignored them. Both of them were hoping to fight Gaara in the final rounds, although no one knew how Mist really operated other than Mist Ninja, but failure was not tolerated. The fact that one of their own was killed only meant that he was weak and would have died at any rate. He should have tried to take the Suna boy down with him, as the Mist didn't shy away from death. Out of all the greater ninja nations, they were the smallest, but it wasn't the face they were an island country, or their location, that kept them safe and a force to be feared. It was how they fought. They fought with embracing death. They killed without hesitation, attacked without worrying about their own safety. If death was assured, then you were to take your enemy to hell with you. That is what it meant to be a Mist Ninja. You were to become demons and monsters of death and mayhem. That was why they were one of the strongest, and why no one had invaded their lands in a long time. Because everyone knew that you would have to pay in blood for every inch you stepped. After the Hokage dismissed them, the teams were filling out of the area. A safe path would be given to the teams for the quickest way out of the forest, but Kakashi had other things to do at the moment. So far he had to trail all 3 of his students for the final round. He had been thinking on this. Each student would need to be trained individually in order to win and even survive this. Kakashi didn't like that 2 of his genins were going up against those Mist genins. Plus Sasuke just had to get that Gaara kid as well. At any rate, he wouldn't be able to split his attention between all 3 and still get them ready. He moved off to make sure that he would be able to get at least one student training by someone he trusted. "Enko, can I speak with you?" Kakashi asked as he walked up to his girlfriend. "Sure, what is it?" "I need a favor." She smirked at him. Again, well, just because we're dating doesn't mean it's for free. "So what do you need me for?" "I want you to train Sakura for me for the month," Kakashi said to her. "I have a new justice that she can learn and she'll need to learn them. I can't teach her but you can, plus I think she looks up to you. Also I know you can help her out and I trust you. Enko was surprised by this and felt happy that he was trusting her with one of his genins. Sure, she had helped out before but this was a bit more different, he was placing the life of his genin in her hands. She had seen what that Amy kid had done. Sakura would need to really get some training in, to survive a fight with that girl. Plus she had to admit the pink-haired girl had been impressing her lately. First in the forest and now in the arena, she was curious as to what the girl could do if really pushed hard. You know what, I'll do it for free. I like the girl and tell her that in a couple of days I'll come by her place. I need to get a training area ready first so I hope she doesn't mind. Kakashi nodded, that's good, a couple of days is all I need to set things up. Thanks. Not a problem. She grinned at him. Now with that out of the way he needed to track down the person he wanted to train Naruto, plus he needed him to take a look at that seal on Naruto's stomach. He had gotten lucky with the opponent but he could already see that people were giving him questioning looks. It had to be hard to keep that a secret from everyone and if this kept up, they might figure it out. But it was Naruto's choice to tell them he wouldn't interfere. Sometimes a parent had to let a child make their own choices in life. It was the only way to truly learn and grow at times. Forest of Death Tower, Hospital Area. The tower had its own medical area given that this place was designed for holding battles. Each person was given their own room so that each person would heal in peace. Once they were stabilized they would be moved to the main hospital in the village for further care. At this moment Neji was standing outside the room for Tenten. He had been waiting for over an hour before the medics told him that he could visit her but only for an hour. She needed her rest after they had fixed her up. Neji saw Lee and Guy as well but Guy just gave him a thumbs up. Neji sighed as he went in and gently went to the single bed in the small room. Tenten was lying in the bed, the medics had taken her hair out of the buns and it was all loose. He felt his cheeks heat up as he looked at her. She had a few bandages here and there but she looked peaceful like that. Even kind of beautiful. He shook himself out of it as he tried to think of something else. Neji. Tenten's voice called out to him. He looked to see her eyes were open as looking at him. When their eyes locked she suddenly looked away, almost in shame. I can't believe I lost so badly. I thought I already told you that I was proud of how fierce you fought. Neji said as he took the seat next to her bed. No but still, I thought I was better than that. Tenten sighed, she wouldn't feel like this if she had only done better. There was nothing wrong with losing but losing that badly had hurt her pride as a ninja. Neji knew how prideful she was, her ambition was to be as famous as the great Tsunade after all. He wasn't sure what to say, he wasn't that great when it came to personal stuff. Tenten, we all think you did your best and we're all proud. The only thing you can do now is learn from it and get stronger. Tenten looked up at the ceiling as she thought about that. It was true that she could learn something from this. She needed to come up with a way to get around that hole in her technique. It seems I'm fighting Shino but if I pass him then I'll be fighting the Suna girl most likely. Neji told her. I'm not sure how to beat her but there is a month to plan for that. However there is the problem with Shino, with his bugs he can attack on multiple angles. There is a technique I could do, but I'll need your help with it. My help? She blinked at him. He nodded, I need someone I trust and whose skills are perfect for this. I need your strength in order to win, plus I'm sure between us we could think of something to deal with that girl's wind attacks. Tenten felt her cheeks heat up slightly, he wanted to train with just her, for a full month. You sure you want me? He took her hand in his and squeezed it gently, there is no one else I would want. Sakura had to wait even longer than Neji did, given that Ino had been even more injured. After being told that Anko would be her sensei for the month she had been a bit excited at that. But now she was just filled with worry, her oldest friend was laying in there and she felt so helpless. She wanted to be able to help but what could she do? Once again people around her were injured and she could do nothing. It was like the forest all over again, she only knew the basics that were taught in school about first aid. Not how to stop bleeding wounds, blood loss and major injuries. She caught a waste basket to the side, there were bloody bandages that hadn't been thrown out yet, a feeling of throwing up nearly came to her. But she quickly put it down, now wasn't the time and she needed to see Ino first. She was asleep by the looks of it and she just sat there looking at her best friend in the world. She looked paler than normal and she was breathing deep, most likely she was under some kind of medication. Sakura gently touched her friend's hand with hers. I don't know if you can hear me, but I'll get that girl back for this. I'm going to train hard this month and I will beat her, you have my promise on that. After Sakura left, she felt a new determination to avenge her friend. She saw her team had been waiting and nodded to them as they went in to check on her. Sakura found her team waiting around for Kakashi to show up. She cast a look to her teammates. She was a little worried about both of them for different reasons. But it was Naruto that had her concerned the most. So how is Ino doing? Naruto asked. Better, but she lost a lot of blood. They want to keep her overnight to let her body rest before moving her. Sakura remembered the old bloody bandages she had seen. She was so lucky. If that girl had cut into her wrists or something, she would have bled to death. Man, these mist guys are pissing me off, Naruto said angrily. I mean what they tried to pull with Kiba and now Ino. Plus they weren't concerned at all that one of their teammates was killed. They obviously don't care about their teammates. Sasuke spoke up as he thought about it. Remember that story Kakashi-sensei told us about how it used to be called the blood mist? I get the feeling that it's everyone for themselves there. It hasn't been that long, and depending on who trained them, if they're from that older generation like Zabuza. He left it hanging as that reminded them of their encounter. They couldn't speak out about it just in case someone overheard. But they all remembered how Zabuza had been a very cold person before he had a change of heart. It might be a good thing that the Mist Sensei hadn't been seen. Not all genins had their sensei with them. After all, with all the other teams here, they had only seen one sensei from Suna. Even Kabuto's team didn't seem to have one with them. Well, we got a month to train for them, Sasuke commented as the others nodded with that. Sakura looked to Naruto. He seemed a bit better now than he had been earlier. She figured that maybe she could ask him what was bothering him and what was going on. Hey Naruto, do you want to talk about what happened? She asked gently. What do you mean? He asked, trying to feign ignorance. She means the weird feeling you gave off in the forest and what happened with that guy you fought. Sasuke said point blank. He never was one to dance around a topic. He too had started to notice the odd things with Naruto and he didn't like people keeping secrets from him. Naruto wasn't sure what to do at the moment. He had thought about telling them the truth many times, but honestly it's not something you can just tell people. He was still debating telling Hinata. In fact, he felt she had more of a right to know. He was in a relationship with her now, so he had to tell her at some point, but there was still that fear of what would people think of his secrets. He didn't like it, but sometimes you couldn't just tell people everything. He looked at his two teammates and knew that he couldn't keep them in the dark eventually. Sakura could see that this was really bothering Naruto. He always seemed so sure of himself, but now being so lost on what to do, she felt a bit bad putting him in a spot like this. Naruto, you know you can trust us with anything, right? Sakura told him. We wouldn't think anything less of you, but if you don't want to tell us, you don't have to. But just remember that we're your friends and always will be okay. Okay. Now Naruto felt both bad in keeping his secrets and guilty. After everything they had gone through, they did deserve to know something. What kind of friend would he be? He needed time to think, both on what to do and what to tell them, let alone how to tell them. It's not like you can just blurt out the biggest secrets you had. Maybe he could finally tell someone. This secret was like the weight of the world on his shoulders. Guys, I know you're my team and I want to tell you. But it's kind of hard for me. Naruto said softly. So there is something, Sasuke commented as he sighed. Well, whatever, everyone is entitled to their personal lives, but this isn't something we have to worry about, is it? No, in fact I only found out not too long ago. He figured that if they could understand a bit they might accept that much. At least for now they might. But I can't speak about it in a place like this, too many people could hear it. Well, when you're ready we will be there to listen, okay? Sakura said with a smile. Naruto looked at the two of them and he felt a bit better that they were patient with him. He smiled under his mask and nodded. Ah, there you all are, Kakashi said, walking up to them. I managed to get things settled, so everyone meet me tomorrow at the usual time and place. Also Naruto, I will be working late on something, so please don't wait up. Something important? Naruto asked. Kakashi nodded. Just something to help deal with Sasuke's little problem with that mark. I would have done it sooner, but staying around here and Looking for help in training you all. Well, I got behind in my work. Help with our training? Sakura asked. Kakashi nodded. Yes, I can't train all three of you. So I'll be training Sasuke. I hope you don't mind Naruto, but I've trained you for your entire life and I felt you needed someone else's help for once. Don't worry, the man I picked will certainly help you beat that guy you're up against. At least I hope I can find him. I know he's here, but I need to make sure that I give Naruto a good teacher. Also, I'm pretty sure I can convince him to train Naruto. Kakashi thought to himself. As for Sakura, I hope you don't mind who I picked. She's very interested in training you for the month, also I'll be giving you some jutsu scrolls. It's time you learned to harness your elemental chakra, and if I remember, you tested as water. It should be very surprising to be able to use that against your opponent, as I bet she won't be expecting that. Kakashi concluded. Sakura grinned at that. Anything that would help her was welcomed. Elsewhere, it hadn't been easy for Kakashi to find him. He had considered using his dogs to find him, but honestly he was still trying to avoid high chakra use, and summoning wasn't easy on your chakra. So he resorted to the old-fashioned way. He went looking for where any pervert would be. The adult bookstore was a bust and he had to force himself not to stay too long in there. Then there were the parks, public pool, but the hot springs was when he had finally found him. For a normal person or even an average ninja he would have been hard to spot, but Kakashi wasn't called a genius as a child for nothing. There behind the wall of the women's section, hidden behind some realistic-looking bushes, was Jiraiya as he was looking through a small peephole that he obviously had made. He giggled as he stopped to write something down. Kakashi slowly made his way up behind him. He figured the man's attention was totally on the women. So how did the kid do? I heard you ran into some trouble in the forest. Jiraiya said, not looking up from his notes. Kakashi blinked in surprise. Obviously even at least 50 the man's skills hadn't lessened. Well, the man was a legend for a reason. Yes, Orochimaru was in the forest of death and I got the injuries to prove it. Kakashi tried not to clench his teeth at the thought of what the man had done to his genins and Anko. He also put a curse mark on Sasuke. That got Jiraiya to stop writing. He knew a serious topic when one came up. What do you plan on doing with that? Even I can't get rid of those damn things. I tried once with that girlfriend of yours when she first got back. Kakashi was yet again surprised. She never mentioned that. Oh, she didn't know, as she hadn't been conscious at the time. They weren't sure of her loyalties that early on. He sighed remembering that day. He had been found and brought back to take a look at the seal when the girl was unconscious. He tried a few things, but whatever Orochimaru had been playing around with wasn't anything he had seen before. Well, I plan on putting a seal around it. It should help him at least control it from activating. Kakashi told him and he nodded his head. Also, I'm here on a more personal matter. What's that? I want you to train Naruto for the month, Kakashi said simply. I can't train them all. I got Anko training Sakura and I need to train Sasuke, as there are only a few things that only I can teach him. He'll need them to survive. Naruto's fight is going to be deadly and I need you to train him for me. What's the worst that can happen? Kakashi gave him a serious look. He's up against a mist member and they are out to prove something. Jiraiya groaned in disgust. If a mist ninja wasn't bad enough, one with something to prove was even worse. Plus I need you to take a look at him as well. Orochimaru did something to the seal. Those words made Jiraiya drop his notepad. To mess with the seal that Minato put on Naruto was insane. Not even he knew the full extent of the seal, as it was the most complex and brilliant design he had ever seen. Sure, he could copy the effects, but there was something about the seal that eluded him. Then again, Minato had been a true genius with seals and ninjutsu. Someone like him only game maybe once 100 years. But the fact that Orochimaru would do something so dangerous just proved how insane his teammate had gone. What are the effects? Jiraiya asked as he got his pad off the grass. He seems to have trouble molding his chakra. Jiraiya thought about it. Only a few things could do that. Thankfully nothing came to mind that was dangerous, like releasing that damn fox demon among them again. Well, he would have to deal with his. He couldn't have Orochimaru screwing around with things like that at any rate. Plus the boy was interesting. He still remembered their first meeting at these hot springs. The kid was something to say the least. He planned on training the boy anyway when the time was right, in Minato's memory, but it looked like he would have to start off a bit more earlier than he had planned. Have him meet me here tomorrow and I'll get started," Jiraiya said as he went back to looking at the beautiful women in the warm water again. Kakashi only nodded as he left quietly. With that out of the way now he just needed to set up the seal for Sasuke that he would use tomorrow. He sighed, it was a long day and already it wasn't over with yet. Outside the Hitaki home, Naruto sighed as he walked home. He didn't really feel like eating, only sleeping for a day. He was wondering what his dad would be doing but decided that he would find out soon enough. Plus he had to sleep on what he was going to do with his secret. Then there was this mysterious trainer. Who was his dad going to pick? Was it someone that he knew like a Jonin or someone special? He tried to think of what could possibly be the new trainer but honestly he wasn't sure. The only thing he knew was that it was a guy and that was it. Naruto-kun. Naruto nearly jumped at the sound of Hinata's soft voice. He was surprised to find her behind him. He must have really been out of it to not notice her of all people. Suddenly he felt a lot happier seeing her there. "Hey there Hinata-chan, sorry you didn't pass but that was one hell of a fight. I'm sure you'll be a lot strong next time." Hinata gave a soft smile at this. He always was behind her even in her defeats. Thank you, I decided that I didn't want to fall behind so I'm having Kurenai-sensei train me. Shino-kun is training with his family and I wanted to learn more than just my family style. Kurenai-sensei said she would agree but I came here for another reason. Oh, Naruto wondered what it could be, then again he had the home alone, maybe she wanted to make out. He grinned at the thought of them on the couch together for who knows how long. My father wants you over for dinner, Hinata said bursting his bubble. He knows that we're dating and wants to meet you. But he already knows me. Naruto said confused. She looked down playing with her fingers when she was really nervous about something. No, I mean in a more professional point. As in he wants to talk about us with you. Oh, that kind of dinner, Naruto said in a very defeated tone. He knew that kind of thing might happen but he had hoped that since Hiyashi knew him so well he might let it slide. Apparently not and now he had to do this as well. Hinata nodded, if you can you make it tomorrow night? I know the training might start then but after that night we might not see each other for over a month. She looked a bit depressed at this and he suddenly realized that this would be a month without his girlfriend. Oh man, this is going to be a very long month, Naruto thought. If I want to see her one last time then I have to go through with this and get it over with at the same time. Is this formal? He asked with a sigh. He insisted, Hinata told him. Naruto hung his head in defeat, I'll be there by 7. Hinata looked up happy that he would agree and hugged him tightly. He felt how her body pressed up against him. He also couldn't help but remember what she looked like in a swimsuit and out of it and what was pressed up against him. Well, maybe it wasn't all bad if he got hugs from her at least. Thank you so much, she told him smiling. He couldn't help but smile back. Well, anything for my girlfriend, right? What kind of boyfriend would I be? She giggled at him, happy that he would agree to this. She just hoped her family would behave. Chapter 54, Meet the Trainers. The next day saw all of Team 7 gathered around their usual training area. Each one was wondering what was going to happen that day. Well, that and both Sakura and Sasuke noticed that Naruto was nervous, they just didn't know what he was nervous about. After 10 minutes of him pacing, Sasuke had enough and decided to get down to what was bothering Naruto. What the hell is with you? Sasuke asked annoyed. You act like the end of the world is coming or something. Naruto paused as he looked to his friends. He still wasn't sure to tell them his big secrets even after a fitful sleep. He had been tossing and turning nearly all night with what to do with them, Hinata and the dinner coming up. Then there was the training and his match against that mist guy as well. All in all, this was the most stressful time in his young life and he was not enjoying it. He was the one that usually gave other people stress, damn it. Hinata asked me to go to her family's place for dinner. Apparently her dad wants to talk with me. He sighed. Oh, was Sasuke's only response. He guessed that would explain things. Well, at least Hinata's father likes you, right? Sakura knew that Naruto had been on good terms with the Hyuga for years now. She still remembered visiting him in the hospital that one time when Hinata was nearly kidnapped. In fact, thinking back on it, hadn't he said something about getting stabbed in the chest? That had been a very long time ago, but she was sure that's what he said. She remembered the bandages on his chest. But he had no scar on his chest. She had seen him when they all went swimming that one day, and there was no indication of a scar. She had completely forgotten about that until now. Was this another thing to do with his big secret? She wouldn't push him on it, but looking back there were certainly some odd things about Naruto's health. He never had a sick day, not once while in school. Any injuries he did have seemed to be gone the next day. She hadn't thought much about them as he just claimed he was a fast healer. But scars like the one that should be on his chest don't just heal, at least not normally. Naruto, what are you keeping from us and will you ever trust us to tell us? Sakura thought, and she hoped one day he would. Naruto himself was deep in thought about tonight. He didn't know why he was so nervous. It wasn't like Hiashi would forbid him from seeing Hinata, would he? The man was the head of the clan, so it was possible he could order her not to. He was taken out of that line of thought as a familiar sense of dread came over him. His instincts kicked in as he moved just enough to let a kunai pass back his cheek. There was only one person that kept on trying to toy with him like that ever since he had started to wear the masks, which she started anyway. Damn it, stop doing that. Naruto yelled at the trees as Anko jumped down grinning at him. Ah, but it's just so cute how angry you get, Squirt. She laughed a little. Well, I don't like you ruining my masks. Anko just brushed it off as she walked over to Sakura and looked her over. Well, looks like you and me will be spending a lot of time together. Now let me just say, I won't go easy on you, and this month will be most likely the most grueling and tough month of your life. So I want you to give me everything you got and then some. I want you to keep training until you puke blood and then get back up for more, got me? Sakura gulped and nodded her head, not really trusting her voice. When Anko got serious she could be very intimidating. Anko gave her a long look as if she was judging Sakura, which in a way she was trying to see if the girl really meant it. The body seemed weak, but the girl's green eyes had that spark of fire in that. That was good, she would need that for the month. I'll hold you to that. So everyone is here, Kakashi said as he and an older man with long spiky white hair came walking to them. Sasuke and Sakura didn't know the strange man, but Anko had a look of surprise on her face. Even with her ninja training she couldn't wipe the surprise off it. It wasn't every day you meet one of the legendary three. She had only met Tsunade once, when she was first brought back after being found. Then her old sensei being another. It was rare to be able to say you meet all three, at least for those in her generation, that is. Naruto however did know who this was as he got a smile under his mask as he pointed at the all-man. Ero Sennin, I haven't seen you since me and Konohamaru ran into you. Kakashi gave the old man an amused look. Ero Sennin, huh? Couldn't you have taught him some manners? Jiraiya muttered to the younger man. Kakashi just shrugged, tried it and failed, so I gave up. It was too much energy as I doubt he would ever change, besides he usually gives nicknames to those that are special to him, so take heart with that. Jiraiya gave a sour face. That wasn't much of a good thing. The least the boy could do was to give him at least a somewhat decent nickname. You know that guy? Sasuke asked his blonde teammate. Yeah, I met him once before. He's the guy that writes those books of my dad's. I'm sure you remember, right? Naruto grinned as Sasuke turned a slight shade of red. He never did forgive him for making him hear one of those books all those years ago. He's also one of the strongest ninja alive, Anko said as she swatted the back of Naruto's head lightly. You should show some respect, brat. Maybe when you stop acting crazy, Naruto muttered. What? Is that any way to talk back to me? I thought I was your Auntie Anko, or has that status been changed since I've been dating your dad? Anko couldn't help but smirk as Naruto got very uncomfortable. It wasn't like he was against them dating, in fact he actually liked the idea. But he just didn't like the mental pictures of them together alone that came up. There were just some things a child didn't want to know about his father. Kakashi walked over to Anko. He was glad to see her arm out of that sling, although he could tell she was still hurting. Hell, he still was as well, but they couldn't wait to get better. They might not be a full strength, but they didn't have any time to waste. He dug out the scrolls that he had made for Sakura. She would need them. Here, these are for Sakura, he said, handing them over. She's a water type, so I thought it would be good for her to use these. Anko took them and placed them in her coat. Sure thing, she'll need everything she can get. She signed as a thought hit her. A whole month apart, man, this is going to just drag on. He chuckled as he gave her that one-eyed smile of his. Yes it will, but I can't wait until it's over so we can make up for the time. She smirked as that thought brought a smile to her face. Pervert, I thought you liked that part of me. He whispered into her ear. He could see her trying not to shudder at the sensation of his breath there. She ran a slender finger over his jawline. Who said I was complaining? She could tease him just as much as he could. It would be a very long month, but she had a student to take her frustrations out on, plus she was looking forward to when they were together again. Sure, they hadn't dated much, but they were still in that phase when everything was still new and exciting. I think I'm going to be sick, Naruto muttered deadpan, seeing them like that. He was too far away to hear what they were saying, but you didn't need to hear with what he was seeing. I think it's cute, Sakura told him as she giggled at the sight. Sasuke just shrugged it off. He really wasn't the romantic type anyway. Jiraiya, however, was making some notes while no one was looking. This was definitely going into his new book. Sasuke wasn't sure what to think at first. Kakashi had led him into some underground chamber with torches lighting the area and then told to take his top off. If it had been anyone else, he would have had a very bad feeling about this. But as he did so, he noticed that Kakashi was drawing on the ground. Sasuke watched as the Jonin drew a seal, but one he had never seen before. Then again, he didn't know much about seals. He was told to sit in the center and so he did so. It was cold and he wished he could at least put on a shirt. Kakashi then took out some kind of ink as he started to make seals onto Sasuke's body. He was getting bored of just waiting around for this to finish, so he figured he might be able to get some answers. So, this will help with that mark on my neck? Sasuke asked. Kakashi nodded. Yes, the barrier seal I'm putting on will help with the effects. But, it will only work as long as you will it too. It will work on your willpower. If you actually try to draw on the curse mark's power, it won't be effective. That wasn't a problem. So far the thing was nothing but trouble. Hell, it was actually slowing his progress. He really needed this power to be controlled if he ever wanted to continue with his plans to find Itachi one day. There was something else that he had been thinking while in the silence. This power, is it anything like what Naruto has? Sasuke asked as he looked for any kind of reaction, but Kakashi just painted on like he hadn't even heard him. That actually kind of annoyed the boy. He had been hoping for some kind of reaction. I don't know what it is, but both myself and Sakura know he's hiding something. He's got something hidden in the forest, I noticed it. We don't know what, but we guess he'll tell us when the time is right. Kakashi was very silent for a while and Sasuke guessed he was thinking on the subject, then without warning he spoke up. I'm sure he will, when he's ready. Let me just say this, he had a weight of a mountain on his shoulders now, and I hope you and Sakura will help him with his burden. I've tried, but I can only do so much. I don't think I can do much for him, Sasuke said with a shrug. He couldn't guess what was going on, but he doubted he could lend any kind of moral support. He had his own issues to deal with as it was. Actually you can, he does think very highly of you. He not only sees you as his rival, but as his best friend. Well, best male friend. I think Hinata won out years ago. Kakashi chuckled at that. Why? Sasuke did consider Naruto a rival and a friend, although he would never admit the last on out loud. Because you two are a lot alike in some areas, Kakashi explained. Sasuke snorted. He's got a family and friends, what has he ever lost? It came out a bit more bitter than he wanted to, but to him there was no way anyone could understand the kind of pain he had to live with. The fact that the older brother he had idolized, the one that he wanted to be like more than anything, had done such horrible things. Sasuke's life had been torn down to nothing and he had to build it back up from the ground. It was a long and painfully lonely process, but he took strength that he wasn't broken. You're wrong, Kakashi said silently. Naruto has lost. You see, I don't think he's ever told you this, but he's adopted. His parents were killed during the Nine Tails attack all those years ago. They were his only family and he never got to know them, so you see, when he found out he had a hole in his life. I've tried to fill it, but I know what it's like to lose those you've never known. I don't remember my own mother and my father died when I was young. Kakashi wasn't sure what made him tell this, but he felt that Sasuke needed to know, to see that others felt his pain as well. That maybe, he wasn't as alone as he thought he was in the world. Sasuke for his part hadn't known anything about that. Sure, he had guessed that Naruto's mother had died, but he hadn't known that Naruto was adopted by Kakashi. He had always thought that Naruto just took after his mother in looks. With the mask and how he acted at times, everyone just assumed that he was Kakashi's son. He looked at his Jonin teacher, but the man just was continuing to paint on the seals. You knew his parents. Kakashi nodded. They were as close to me as family. I took in Naruto to honor them. I was alone like you were at that age, but still I took on Naruto. I had no experience and was just a kid myself. It was a long struggle and it was most likely the hardest thing I've done. But in my darkest of hours, Naruto was the light that gave me hope and the strength to continue on. I would do everything all over again without even thinking. Being a father has been one of the best and worst experiences of my life, filled with joy, happiness, sorrow, worry, and so many other things. But in the end it was all worth it. And I feel my life is richer for it. Sasuke was lost in thought. He knew the kind of darkness that you could live with, and he had lived with it for so long it had become natural to feel it. But then something had changed. Ever since Team 7 was formed, that darkness had slowly been lifting. He did feel better these days. With Kakashi, Naruto and Sakura, he felt bonds forming that he hadn't had in years. He was still lost in thought when Kakashi told him this next part might hurt. Wait, what did you say? Sasuke asked, not sure if he heard right. Then the blinding pain as Kakashi applied the seal. He saw white flashes of light and his body felt like an electrical current was running through it, then he collapsed into the darkness. Sakura. For Sakura, she was led into a different training area. This was one she hadn't been in before as she followed Anko. There seemed to be various trees and rocks that were large enough to hide behind. In fact, she saw how a few rocks had scratches and nicks from weapons most likely on them. There was also a decent-sized lake. Anko sat on one of the rocks as she took out the scrolls that Kakashi had given her. Okay then, seems like you're a water type. Well, I only know fire jutsus, so you're out of luck there, but I do know of someone that can help out. In fact, when we got to talking we decided to train you and her student together since you're both water types. Someone else will be coming? Sakura asked. Yep, and here they are now. Anko smiled as Sakura looked behind her. Sakura was surprised to see none other than Hinata and Kurenai walking up to them. She hadn't known that Hinata was going to train with them. Why was she training if she wasn't advancing? Well, then again, thinking on it, it would be a good idea to keep training for the month, no need to slack off, right? Plus maybe she was also trying to get better for next time. Either way, it would be nice to have the other girl around. Sakura was closer to Ino, but Hinata was the only other female friend she had growing up. So you're training with Kurenai-sensei. I thought you'd be training with your family. Sakura asked Hinata. I felt that I wanted to broaden myself, Hinata said, looking down as she played with her fingers. I need more than just my gentle fist skills. Yes, and since you're both water types we'll both be training you in how to use them, Kurenai said as she and Anko looked through the scrolls that Kakashi had made up. Yep, that is if you don't have any objections to Hinata learning from these, Anko asked. No, not at all. Sakura told her honestly. Good. Anko was also glad for Kurenai agreeing to this. She had more experience in water chakra control, plus she already had a team of her own. Sure, Anko trained with Sakura with the tonfas now and then, but Anko had never trained anyone for this long a period. Anko looked over both girls. They would have to work on their strength and endurance for sure. Sakura she knew about, but Hinata she didn't know as well. Maybe a friendly spar between the girls would help, in seeing how they progressed now and then would help out. So, what's up first, Anko-sensei? Sakura asked. Well, first we're going for a run through the trees. Well, you two will be. First we'll see how fast you can do it, then how fast while being attacked. After that warm up we'll work on building up your chakra on the water as you two will spar. Anko told them as she got into her all business mode. She may joke around, but when she got serious people listened to her. She didn't make special Jonin at her age for being lazy. Next will be water chakra training, Kurenai told them both. This will give us an idea of where to take things from then on for the rest of the month. Both Sakura and Hinata hadn't expected all of this already, but they were determined not to be scared off by the workload so far. Oh, by the way, you'll both be wearing these. Anko grinned as she pulled out a scroll of her own and unsealed the items within. Two small vests with pouches in the front and back landed with a heavy thud. The pouches held weights that could be exchanged with heavier ones if needed. There were also shoes, but they looked heavier than the normal ones. Lastly were arm bands that looked to be all metal. We need to get you girls into shape and fast. Sakura, since you've done slight weight training, you'll know what to expect when you two put these on. Sakura paled at the heavy equipment. She should have known there would be a catch. Well, what are you waiting for? Enko yelled out. Hurry up and put them on already and get ready for some running. Naruto. Naruto followed Jiraiya to a river deep in one of the forested areas of Konoha. He could hear a waterfall nearby and the place looked pretty deserted, not to mention well isolated. He wondered what the old man could teach him. From the history, that which he had bothered to stay awake for, Jiraiya was said to be one of the strongest ninja not only in Konoha, but in the world. There was no telling how much the man knew, and Naruto hoped he was going to get some kind of kick-ass move that would totally destroy that. Mist ninja. Well, first off, take off the shirt and jacket, kid. What? I have to check the seal. Kakashi told me what happened and I need to see if I can fix what was done. He told him. Naruto was happy to hear this, as it was really starting to get in the way. He took the black vest off and then was the orange t-shirt. Jiraiya told him to get some chakra going and he looked at the stomach as the seal showed up. It was easy to find what Orochimaru had done. Overall it wasn't as bad as he had feared. Minato's seal had an even number set up, but Orochimaru had placed an odd number onto it. This would conflict with the seal, like two opposing forces. It wouldn't break or damage the seal thankfully, but the boy would have a hell of a hard time getting his chakra working properly. Most likely Orochimaru just did this as it was the quickest way to deal with Naruto. That was Orochimaru for you, no elegance at all in his work. Well, this would be easy to fix, it wouldn't be comfortable though. Alright, I'm going to remove it, but this might sting, so just close your eyes. He told the kid. Whatever it takes, just get that thing off me. Naruto sighed as he closed his eyes. Then he felt Jiraiya slamming his fingers into his stomach. It felt like each finger was like a fist punching him in the stomach and he was literally knocked from his feet. He landed seeing some stars for a couple of seconds before jumping back up. What the hell, you call that a sting? That hurt like hell, Naruto said, rubbing his stomach. Just try to walk on that water if you know how to do it and see how it goes, Jiraiya told him. Naruto grumbled as he went to the water. This was a skill he had learned thankfully. He took a step and found that it was a lot easier to get his chakra flowing right. He would feel the difference now as he jumped up with a shout. He tried making his shadow clones and suddenly 20 of them appeared. Now this was more like it. Jiraiya raised an eyebrow at that. The kid certainly had a hell of a lot of chakra to pull that off. That many clones should have put a genin of his age into chakra exhaustion. Hey kid, how many of those can you make? Huh, well, I'm not sure. The real Naruto said, scratching his head. I've never tried to see how many I could make. Alright, first thing we need to see is how much chakra you actually got. I want you to keep making them until you're about to drop, okay? Jiraiya watched as the boy made 50 clones, then 80, then over 100. He lost count somewhere around 260, and he was still going. Even a full-grown adult wouldn't have this kind of chakra reserves. He knew that the boy was slowly absorbing the fox's chakra into his own, but to have this much at his age. He quickly tried to calculate how much it would be when he was an adult, and what he came up with was surprising. The boy would be able to do high-level moves several times in a fight. Alright kid, I think I get the idea, you can take them all away now, Jiraiya told him as the boy dispersed them all. After the smoke cleared, he asked the boy what kind of justice he had going for him. The two wind techniques were nice, although he could tell that the boy could use some work on it. The wind blade would be great to counter any water techniques. The boy also knew how to use that small sword he carried around on his back. Apparently it was the sword of the White Fang himself, now fully restored. His hand-to-hand skills were above average. Hell, they weren't too bad actually, although his style seemed to be a merger of several different ones, not to mention he made things up on the fly. That was good. Being able to improvise in a fight was very handy to have. He had to admit, Kakashi had done well with the kid. He was definitely more than a genin at this point. For a moment he thought back to Minato. He hadn't been this excited to teach since that time. But as he continued to test the boy, he did have some weaknesses. Genjutsu seemed to be one of them. He didn't know much about that himself, so they would have to skip that. Chakra control seemed to be another. It was one of reasons he had trouble with the wind techniques apparently. So have you been training with Chakra Control Kid? He asked Naruto. Yeah, but it's hard. Dad says it's because of all my chakra. Jiraiya nodded. He's right about that. Regular people have a decent flow like water pipes in a house. You're more like trying to control the flow of water from a dam. You got a lot more water and pressure behind it. Naruto thought he got what the old guy was saying. I wonder if that's why the balloon thing was so hard to do then. Balloon thing? Jiraiya asked, curious, as there was only one exercise that he knew. When Naruto explained, he had to hide his surprise. Apparently Kakashi had been teaching him the Rasengan, or at least the first step. This changed some things. He had no idea that the boy had already gotten that far. He would have to see if he could get him to burst a rubber ball next. If only to see if he could do it, but then again he had a feeling this boy might surprise him. Well, anyway, I think I have something that might work out, Jiraiya said as he took the large scroll he carried with him. I take it that you know of summons since your dad holds the contract for the dogs. Yeah, I can't wait to sign it. Then I can get guys like Pakun out anytime I wanted. Naruto smiled happily. Jiraiya raised an eyebrow at that. He honestly hadn't thought that the boy would want to make a contract with the dogs. Normally you could only sign one contract. It was true you could sign more, but that was extremely rare. Many of the summon animals didn't like certain groups. It was hard enough at times to just get one signed, as you either had to go to where the animals lived and earn their trust, or the trust of someone that held the contract. Well, the dogs are good for tracking but nothing much else. Don't get me wrong, they're decent at close quarter combat, but I was hoping you would want to sign with the toads like myself. He pulled out the scroll as it unraveled and a list of names was shown. Naruto thought about it. He really did want the dogs. What good are the toads? I mean, there was that large one I remember you using. Kid, they are great. They have techniques that are totally unique to them. Hell, some of them are bigger than some buildings, while others are small enough to use as spies and letter delivery. They have a wide range of uses. Plus, take a look at who was the last summoner. He knew this was kind of a cheap shot to get him to do it, but he felt it was the kid's birthright. Naruto looked at the list of names, many he didn't know. There was Jiraiya, and then he got to the last one before the blanks. It was the name of his biological father. He couldn't help but stare at the written name, and he only really had a picture of his dad and mother. This was written by him, a man he only knew from history books and the stories Kakashi told him. He couldn't help himself but trace his hand along the lines that made up the man's name. You knew him? Naruto asked in a quiet voice. He was my greatest student, Naruto. Jiraiya said as he sat down with the boy. A man like him comes once in a lifetime. Naruto was silent a long moment as he thought this out. Eventually he came to a decision. If I sign this, will you tell me about him? I only know what my dad told me and I want to know him more. The old man smiled and nodded. Hey, I'd tell you even if you didn't sign it. It's every child's right to know where he comes from. He saw Naruto's surprised look as he stared at man. Oh please, I was his sensei. You honestly didn't think I wasn't around when he and Kushina got together? Hell, I still remember her pregnant with you, boy. I'll even tell you about your mother as I knew her as well. Naruto couldn't speak for a moment. He never knew someone else that had known his biological parents. Maybe the third knew, but Jiraiya seemed to have been a lot closer. Thanks. Good then, now I'll show you how to sign this and we can get to some real training. The old pervert grinned and Naruto just grinned back. Chapter 55, Dinner at the Hyuga House. Naruto groaned as he tried to put on his best clothing. He still felt a little tired from all the training he had today, but he did promise Hinata that he would be there. He just wished he had more of a break, plus he hated the formal clothing. They looked a lot like Hyuga wear with some slight alterations of course, but still, he was never comfortable in them. The only reason he had these was because his dad felt that if he ever needed them, they would come in handy. He hated it when his dad was right about this kind of stuff. He also had to pull off his mask as he stuffed it inside of a pocket. He felt naked without it, but he felt that it wouldn't go over well. He decided to wear it to the Hyuga compound but pull it off when he got inside. Besides, he used to run around without one there before, even if it was when he had been a little kid. He sighed as he got ready. This was for his girlfriend, at least that's what he kept telling himself. Besides, he shouldn't be too nervous. His mind went back to the training. So far it hadn't been too bad, although summoning was a lot harder than his dad made it look. He had spent the entire time trying to summon, At first he got nothing but legless tadpoles, then tadpoles with legs. The best he did was when he summoned a mall red toad called Gamakichi. The guy was kind of a pain in the ass, but at least he was smarter than the only other toad he had managed to summon. Apparently the younger brother to Gamakichi, a yellow one named Gamatatsu. Now, Naruto knew that he wasn't what you called book smart, but even to him, he could tell that Gamatatsu, although much nicer than his brother, was a bit on the slow side. Plus the two kept demanding snacks of all things. He really wanted to call up one of those cool battle toads that Jiraiya could do. Those would be great in battle and would really help out when he fought that guy in the match. Well, he still had 29 days left to get to that point and he wasn't going to stop until he could get a huge toad. Anyways, he had better hurry or else he was going to be running late. He quickly made his way to the Hyuga compound, taking the shortcut of jumping over buildings, but since the compound didn't have any high building anywhere near it, he had to walk the last leg. He kept his mask on when he got to the gate guards. He bet that if he showed up without, they might not know who he was. They usually saw him with the mask anyway. They let him in easily enough as he was expected, and when he was in, he was led to the main house. He pulled off his mask and placed it in a pocket. He really felt weird walking out in the open without it, even here. It was Neji that met up with him. The older boy was in traditional Hyuga garb. It was the first time that he had seen Neji dressed up like this. He looked like any other Hyuga. Even the headband was changed from his forehead protector to a silk band to cover the mark hidden under it. After years of knowing this clan, Naruto knew all about that seal that was placed on the branch members. Personally, he hated that thing and felt it was stupid. No other clan had that, or a caste system like they had. But it wasn't his place, at least yet. When he became Hokage, he planned to try and change things. "Hey Neji, how are things?" Naruto asked the other boy. "Fine," Neji said simply as he led him on. "So, how's Tenten?" Naruto asked, wondering how the girl was. He caught Neji's head snap up slightly and was that a slight blush. Maybe something had happened between the two. He knew that there was something between the two members of Team Guy. Maybe he could squeeze a little information out of him during dinner. This might be fun after all. "She's doing better, she'll be helping me train for the last exam," he told him. Naruto whistled. "Man, you're lucky. Spending all that time alone with a pretty girl, just the two of you. Kind of makes me wish that me and Hinata-chan were. Finish that sentence in any perverted way with my cousin and you'll find all your chakra paths shut down," Neji said with a slight tick on his skull. Although he accepted Naruto and Hinata's relationship, that didn't mean he wanted to hear about certain private things. Plus, as long as he treated her with respect and didn't take things too far, he could live with it. Naruto knew that Neji couldn't permanently do what he said, but he was sure the older boy would try and it would hurt. So he kept his mouth shut as he was led into the main dining hall. He had only seen it but never actually ate here before. It was a large rectangular room, with a long table on it. You were to sit on cushions and he was led to one of them. He sat down as Neji took a spot further down the table. Moments later, Neji's father, Hizashi, came in and nodded to Naruto slightly as he took a spot across his son. From the looks of it, it was customary to have any branch members sit at the far end of the table. It was just another little thing the main house did to keep the branch members in their place. Naruto put that as yet another reason he heeded the caste system. Then the large double doors opened up as Hiyashi walked in first, looking as poised and noble as he usually did. Naruto wondered how much training it took to get a person to look that stiff and proper all the time. Most likely years growing up in this environment did that. He was glad that Hinata wasn't that stiff. Speaking of, with the Hyuga sisters were up first, he noticed that they were in more fashionable attire. Hanabi, he noticed, was looking her best, but it was Hinata that drew his attention. She was in fancy blue robes with a waistband and he could see how it gave her a slight hourglass figure. He was certain that she would later grow into that figure even more, but he was happy with it all the same. Her face had a slight makeup job done on it. He had never seen her in makeup. It made her look more like royalty when he looked at her. Slight eyeliner, with a light red lips and blush added to her cheeks. She caught him staring and the blushed cheeks didn't need the makeup to make them seem rosy anymore. They all took their seats as other branch members came in to serve the dinner. It was a lot fancier than the kind of stuff Naruto was used to, but he tried his best to use his good table manners. His dad taught him them in case he might actually need them at some point. So far the dinner didn't seem to be anything to worry about, pleasant conversations about the training and the upcoming Chunin exams mainly. Naruto felt a bit more relaxed by the time the meal ended, but it was then that Hiyashi seemed to get even more serious, which Naruto thought couldn't even be possible. Naruto, as I understand it, you are now dating my eldest daughter, Hiyashi simply said. He never liked to dance around a subject and it was time to get things out in the open. He noticed Hinata blush a bit from being put on the spot, but he went on. As you know, you have been a friend of his clan for years. But a friend and courting not only a main family member, but my own daughter are two separate things. Given my daughter's station, it is not a simple matter. Although she hasn't had a suitor picked out by the clan elders, if you wish to continue to see my daughter romantically, you'll need to win their approval. What? You mean I got to win over some old guys just to date my girlfriend? Naruto didn't like the sound of this at all. He also missing everyone other than Hiyashi wince. Naruto was the least diplomatic person in the world, it would seem. Then again, not many would yell at the head of the Hyuga clan, but this wasn't the best way to deal with the problem. Not for the time being, Hiyashi mentally sighed. She's too young to be betrothed, but when she reaches that age then you will have to win the respect of the elders. Which Hiyashi knew wouldn't be easy. Marriage outside of the clan wasn't common, let alone to the heir of the clan. So then I'll do just that. Naruto never did like people telling him what he could and couldn't do, but there was no way someone was going to tell him he couldn't see Hinata. Naruto, what are your intentions towards my daughter? Hiyashi said very slowly and very seriously. Naruto was a little taken aback by switch in topic. Well, she's my girlfriend, what else is there to it? What I mean is, what do you plan for with her? Hiyashi told him. Is this merely just a fling, or do your feelings run a lot deeper? Naruto blushed as he wasn't sure. After all, he had only just started to date her. Well, I really like her. I mean, she's been in my life for so long I can't really see her not in it. She's one of my precious people to me. Hinata could only look in wide-eyed adoration at Naruto's words. They made her feel happy to hear such things from Naruto. Hiyashi thought about what the boy had said. It would seem that although young, the boy's feelings were starting to be strong. If he seriously wanted to pursue his oldest child, then he would need that strength. Even as children, his wife thought they might end up together, and she had always been a wise woman. But they both had known the kind of things that Naruto would face if he did want to have a relationship with Hinata. If you do care for my daughter, then you have better become someone that no one could turn away, Hiyashi told him. If not, then it's best you only stay friends, at least for her sake. Her sake? Naruto asked, confused, looking at the others. Hinata and Hanabi seemed to be confused, but the others did seem to know what the clan head was talking about. You, the elders don't approve of you, and you continue to see her, then Hinata will be punished. Hiyashi needed for them all to understand the full consequences. She would have the seal placed onto her and put into the branch family by going against the elders. Also, if you two still see each other, she could face excommunication. Hinata got very pale at that as Hanabi and Neji gave her worried looks. Excommunication was the worst fate for any Hyuga. Not only were they to be branded with the seal, if they didn't have it, they would be considered dead to the clan. They would be kicked out of the compound, and all Hyuga were to never speak to that person or even acknowledge them ever again. Hinata knew that she would never be able to see her family again. Even if she saw Hanabi on the street, Hanabi would be forced to ignore her older sister or face punishment as well. And to those that broke the excommunication, they too could end up facing the same fate. Naruto didn't know what he meant, so Hizashi explained it all to Naruto. Naruto had never known about that, and he could see Hinata's worried face. Naruto sat silently as he thought about it all. If he really wanted to date Hinata, he would have to really prove himself. He would have to train and become very strong. He already planned on being Hokage. The question was, could he become that before Hinata was old enough? Plus, what if he didn't? Then what would he do? He knew how important family was, and he couldn't let Hinata give up on hers. Naruto looked very solemn when he looked Hiyashi in the eyes. I will prove to those old men that I'm the one for Hinata-chan, I promise that. And if you can't? Hiyashi asked him sternly. Naruto looked at her and then down at the table. I can't ask her to give up her family. Hiyashi nodded his head as he looked to see the worried look on his daughter's face. He didn't like this, but he had responsibilities and that took over the responsibility of being a father at times. Then if by that time you can't appease the elders, then you must give up any romantic relationship with Hinata. I won't ask you to never see her again, but nothing more than friendship. The rest of dinner was very quiet after that. Elsewhere, there were many hotels in Konoha, from visiting merchants to VIPs coming to the village. It was also that each hotel was given a room to a different genin team when the Chunin exams were being held. The rooms were paid by the village as the other villages' teams were guests after all. But it was also ensured that no hotel would have more than one team. There had been incidents in the past where one team would try and eliminate competition, so for security reasons it was to split up the rooms available. In this case, the current one where Baki and his team used was in the central area of the village. Baki had already talked with Konkuro about his loss. It was disappointing to see that not all of them were going into the finals. But then again, that boy in green had some impressive skills. He got the feeling there was much more he hadn't seen. In fact, some of the Konoha team had been surprising, although Gaara's attention had been on that masked blonde kid. Gaara had actually asked, demanded without threat of violence to know more about the boy. Someone had caught the young redhead's attention. Baki pitied that boy. If Gaara thought you were interesting, it meant your death sentence. But he had other concerns now. He was to meet his contact inside the village. When he first met the boy, he had been surprised at first that a young leaf genin would be a spy and traitor, but after that first meeting he saw through the facade. The boy was anything but a boy. Behind that pleasant mask he wore was a very dangerous person. Baki wasn't sure if the boy was even really a genin. The young ninja was too good and too skilled with calm nerves of iron. It was bit unsettling actually, being in his presence, but Baki left his hotel to meet up with his contact. Although he hadn't even noticed the shadow he had picked up. Baki made it to the balcony and waited. He didn't have to wait long before the white-haired boy named Kabuto showed up, silently as ever. I take it there are no problems? Baki asked the young man. He smiled, but there was little humor in that smile. It was the kind that actually put the veteran ninja on ease actually. Of course, we're ready to start slowly, having your people in mind infiltrating the village. I've set up safe areas and fake papers to get them past the gate, but they must keep a low profile. Also, the staging areas are already set up, but we'll wait until the day before to move the men into position. Baki had to admit that when he first heard the plan it was a daring one. So much could go wrong, but it was also genius, using the Chunin exams as a cover to have two forces invade a village. But he was worried, using the exams in such a way would ruin their village's reputation. The Chunin exams were a sacred thing, and to use them like this, no one would trust Suna or Oto for exams for generations. It would cause many problems in the future. But it was his Kage's orders and he would obey, even if this whole affair didn't make sense to him. The Leaf had been their allies for years. True, it was a tenuous alliance, originally for mutual support, but it was still an alliance. Which made everything worse, breaking an alliance with their plan. Yes, no one would trust Suna and their reputation would suffer for it all. Your master Orochimaru is a very dangerous man, but his plan leaves a bad taste in my mouth. He finds it more practical deal with events in the most practical manner, even if it's brutal, treacherous or viewed as distasteful by others. Kabuto smirked as he adjusted his glasses. But you shouldn't throw that name around, especially in this village. You'll never know who is listening. He cast his gaze to a shadowy area and Baki made a slight move to see with his peripheral vision. Baki then caught the movement of someone fleeing the shadows. Baki saw in his head. He was certain he had slipped away unnoticed. He had been complacent and now it cost him. Since it was his mistake, it was his duty to correct that. I'll handle him. You better leave before someone else shows up. Very well, Kabuto smirked as he watched Baki leave after the Leaf spy. Hinata's room. Naruto and Hinata finally had a moment to themselves. They were in her room and it hadn't changed much since he last saw it. Although the bunny cage was new given her new pet, Haku. He remembered a response he got from Wave when he told Haku what Hinata named the rabbit. He was flattered that she had done so and was glad to hear how things were going. Haku was also doing much better, although they still couldn't mention certain names just in case. Sure, the ninja that delivered mail were totally neutral, but that didn't mean they couldn't be ambushed. But still, it was nice to hear how things were getting along over there. Although now he felt a lot more relaxed, he hoped he didn't have to go through something like that again anytime soon. They hadn't said anything about the deal that was made over dinner, they just wanted to enjoy their time together. Because they both knew that they were both thinking that their time together would be very limited. Naruto then noticed Hinata sigh as she sat on her bed and her shoulders looked like they were bothering her. She kept rolling them now and she was trying not to move her arms, he noticed. "Hey, are you okay, Hinata-chan?" Naruto asked as he sat down with her. Oh, it's nothing, just training with Kurenai-sensei and Anko-sensei is being tough." He laughed it off or tried to. Truth was she was sore all over from just the first day. She knew that Kurenai could be tough but Anko was more strict. "Huh, I thought Auntie Anko was training Sakura-chan." "Oh, that's right, you didn't know." Hinata told him how Kurenai and Anko had decided to train the two of them together. She went in on her training, to the running with the weights on, to then sparring, and then Kurenai was having them train in genjutsu. Mainly to see past them, thanks to her eyes she had a bit of an advantage. With simple ones she managed great, that is as long as her own visual nervous system wasn't affected, although Sakura was surprisingly adept at them too. "Wow, that's great, you'll both get really stronger. I can't wait to see how you both are at the end of a month," he praised her, causing her to blush. Then he got an idea, he led her to the center of the bed as she was wondering what he was planning. Of course all kinds of ideas were running through her mind. After all, she was alone with the boy she cared for, in her room, and on her bed. So many possibilities, but he wouldn't dare try something so bold while her own family was in the same building, would he? "Here, just relax a bit, okay?" he said as he got behind her and she felt his hands on her shoulders. She turned as red as a tomato as he did this, then he gently started to work the muscles in her neck and shoulders. It hurt a bit but he was gentle and soon it felt nice. She closed her eyes as she enjoyed the sensation. Naruto had to admit that he was thankful for being able to do this. He had read this kind of thing but to do it in real life was even better. Plus with such short hair she really had a cute back neck. He wanted to move in close and plant a kiss on it. Maybe later, he grinned to himself. At any rate he was proud that she was continued to train so hard. He knew she would be great one day if she kept this up. He thought about how they first met, how afraid and timid she had been. She was still shy but she had grown since then, they both had actually. He couldn't help but chuckle at how things had turned out. What's so funny?" she asked. "Nothing, just thinking about how things have turned out. I mean you were my first friend, my best friend and now my girlfriend." He smiled as he remembered their life together up till this point. "You know, I've been meaning to ask, when did you start to like me more as a friend?" Hinata felt her cheeks heat up and was glad he couldn't see her face. I think since we were little." "What? That long? Why didn't you say anything to me?" He wanted to know why she had held such feelings for him secret for all this time. I was just afraid to lose you as a friend," Hinata said. When did you start to feel different towards me?" "Oh, that's easy, when we had that get-together with everyone at the lake after our mission in Wave." Naruto still remembered how she looked in that swimsuit. Really? She was surprised by that. She didn't think she had done anything to really get his attention that day. It wasn't like she wore a flashy suit like the other girls or had done anything out of the ordinary. Naruto was lost on thought about that day. "Yeah, when I saw you dancing on the water with the others playing tag I realized you were the girl I had been thinking about since I saw her in Wave that one night when." He cut himself off as he realized his mistake. He had been so lost in the memory he hadn't realized that he shouldn't have said that part. Hinata listened but was confused. Girl in Wave, but there was no girl in Wave. Well, he mentioned seeing that girl dance on the water and, oh no. Hinata knew what he meant now, how he had seen her in a late-night training session on the water. She had stripped down to prevent her clothing from getting wet but he hadn't known it had been her. That meant that he had not only seen her naked but had realized it had been her. She pulled away and turned to face him. Her face was all red but this time from embarrassment. In fact, she felt like she wanted to crawl under a rock and die from embarrassment. I didn't really see anything, and I didn't do it on purpose." Naruto tried to think of what to say. What could you say to something like that? Then he noticed that she hadn't moved, not even her face. He waved a hand in front of her eyes but nothing happened. "Ah, Hinata-chan." The next thing he knew she once again fainted, only this time forward. He missed catching her with his hands as her head landed right into his crotch. Well, more of her forehead did as he gave loud grunt of pain. Ow! That hurt Hinata-chan. Unfortunately that wasn't all the bad luck he had. Hiyashi was walking by the room to check up on them. Of course he trusted his daughter, but still he was father. He also wanted to see how Naruto was taking the news. The boy would one day have to prove himself worthy in the eyes of the elders if he planned to keep their relationship going with his daughter. That was when he heard and groaned from Naruto and something about his daughter. He pulled open the door to see what was going out and froze. There on her bed, his daughter was bent forward, her head between the boy's legs as it looked to Hiyashi that he was doing something very inappropriate with her. Naruto Hitaki, Hiyashi said coldly as the boy looked up in surprise. You dare take such liberties with my eldest daughter. Naruto blinked in confusion until he looked down and noticed how things looked. He got a slight nosebleed at the thought but quickly realized that her father looked livid. Not surprising, he walked in on what looked like Hinata was doing something too adult with him, right after he said they might not be a couple later on. So Naruto quickly looked at his options, and did what any sensible boy in this situation would do. He quickly got up and jumped out of Hinata's, thankfully, open window. Hiyashi however was quick to follow, as anyone still up and around would for many years remember the night the clan head was chasing around the blonde boy, with cursing the boy with thousands of ways to die while the boy proclaimed his innocence the entire time. Village rooftops. Hayate didn't know how much longer he could keep this cat and mouse game up. He had to report what he had heart, but that Suna ninja was a smart one. He kept him from getting close to an escape route. Hayate could just yell for help, but he was currently hiding in the shadows and that would alert the ninja to his location. Then he might end up dead and they would only find his corpse. He didn't really mind dying, although he knew his girlfriend would take it hard. She may be an Anbu and tough, but she was still a woman. The thought of her made him hope he could get out of this. He didn't want to meet her in the next world if he got himself killed. So far he had been lucky in sticking to hiding and running, but he knew sooner or later that guy would find him. Where was a Jonin, or Anbu when you really needed them? If the old Uchiha police force had still been around, at least they would have a decent patrols at night for him to run into. If he got out of this alive, he would seriously think about suggesting a higher nighttime patrol. Well, he couldn't go into some civilian's home, they wouldn't stand a chance, and he couldn't have hostages used against him. All the people he knew didn't live close by of all his rotten luck. Hayate however couldn't wait any longer. He saw a rooftop that could take him to the back alleys. He might get more luck on the ground. Problem was, it was in open space. It took him a few moments, but he decided to risk it. Hayate jumped out and pushed his muscles as fast as they would go. He was only 10 feet away from the drop into the alley. For a moment he had hoped that he would make it, but the whistling sound of a kunai made him stop. Several of the ninja weapons landed in his path and he cursed. He pulled the katana that he carried as he turned to face his opponent. Baki stood there looking at the younger man. There was a fierce determination in his eyes, and he had to admit, the man never gave up. He could respect that, but respect or not, he had a mission to do. I applaud you, boy, you gave me a good chase, but it ends here, Baki told him. You act like it's already over, Hayate said as he rushed forward. Leaf style, dance of the crescent moon. Baki watched as the young man jumped up and then split into two parts. He was wondering which was the real one and which was the illusion, but then he sensed a third motion above him. The two were both fakes, he suddenly realized, as the real Hayate came from the sky. The blade hit into Baki's protective vest thankfully, and the light armor managed to catch the sword. Impressive, Baki smiled at the boy. To be able to pull off a move like that at your age is very impressive. But now it's my turn. You should have aimed for my head or cut off a limb instead of going for my armor. Hayate tried to pull his blade free, but it was stuck. The armor looked light, but it was thicker than he anticipated. He tried to move, but he saw the Suna ninja's hand have a slight distortion around it. It was a wind attack, of that he was sure. He knew how dangerous wind attacks could be, but it was already too late. At this range he couldn't dodge it, and he didn't have any skills to block. Wind style. Wind razors, Baki said as many different blades made of wind sliced into Hayate's body. Baki looked down at the bleeding man. He had to admit that the man had skills, but not good enough to defeat him. From the wounds Baki could see that the man would bleed to death, but he couldn't let the slim possibility that the man might survive long enough to warn others. He pulled out a kunai ready to finish it off when he heard a noise approaching him. Get back here. A male voice was heard. I'm telling you it's all a misunderstanding. A boy's voice was heard. Baki cursed his luck, they were coming right this way too. He slipped into the shadows. If he had to, he might have to deal with them as well. 3 bodies in one night wouldn't be good, it would really alert the village that something was wrong with that many dead. Naruto had been running with everything he had, it hadn't been his fault, but was Hinata's father going to listen to him? Hell no. He was going to kill him. So Naruto had no choice but to run. Now he had run before from people chasing him, usually from his pranks, but in all honesty those didn't have Higash's reasons to catch him. For a guy that spent most of his time overseeing a clan, he was in great shape. That was bad news for Naruto, and even worse, how could he hide? Those eyes of Higash's were better than Hinata or Neji, unless he could think of something. He was truly screwed. He risked a glance behind him as they ran over the rooftops, to check to see how far away the man was, not far enough away for Naruto's comfort. Unfortunately, this was a bad move to make. He hadn't been watching his step as he stumbled on something and crashed to a halt on the rooftop he was currently on. He knew he was dead now, the Hyuga leader would catch him now that he had stopped. He sighed and he pushed himself around to face his fate when he froze. There was enough light to see what, or more to that matter, who he had tripped over. It was the guy from the last part of the exam, but he was all cut up and bleeding all over the place. He had forgotten all about Higashi when the man landed. Higashi was going to punish the boy right there until he noticed that Naruto was over the body of a fellow leaf ninja. As a man of priorities, he knew which would come first, but he gave Naruto a hard look. He would deal with the boy later. Naruto, get help and fast, he won't make it without immediate medical attention, he said as he bent down and using his own robes, started to fashion bandages. He didn't know much other than the basic first aid for field dressings, but he hoped it would be enough to give the man some more time. Naruto didn't even blink an eye as he quickly went for help. Baki saw all of this and scowled. It was just bad luck for him. He could see that the man was a Hyuga even in the low light, but from the robes he guessed main house, plus the fact the forehead was bare. That usually meant the better Hyuga fighters, but he wasn't sure if he should stay or leave. He needed to finish off the leaf ninja, but he heard how the Hyuga could see all around them and through objects. The boy was also going to help. He couldn't get the boy as he couldn't leave the target, and the target was now protected. In a long fight more people would come and he would be exposed. He took stock of the situation. The leaf ninja was unconscious and still might not survive. He decided to pull back and let the leaf spy handle things. If the man lived, then the spy could infiltrate the hospital easier than he could and finish the job. He slipped away quietly to avoid the Hyuga using his bloodline to spot him.